Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to episode 3 of Holy Plot. Today is going to be a bit more, I guess I'd say, focused than our last two episodes. There is still plenty of stuff to talk about. Don't worry about that. But the main thing we want to talk about, and if you have any business in the entertainment world, you no doubt know about this already, but Indiana Jones, which just came out, Dial of Destiny. Spoiler alert, complete disaster. So we're going to get into that. We're going to talk a little bit about just Lucasfilm in general, which means going into Star Wars, which you
That'll
will
be fun.
learn from listening to this show that me and James specifically, and by the way, in case you've forgotten, I am one of your hosts, Liam, here with James and Jacob. We have a lot of Star Wars takes, so look forward to that. We also have Superman and Lois wrapped up its season 3 finale. So I think Jacob's got a lot to say about that as a big Superman guy.
I do.
And then to wrap it up, we will go into news just like last week. So have little segments about just what's going on in the industry. Lots of interesting stuff from Disney, lots of interesting stuff from Warner Brothers. It's going to be a good episode. So to start us off,
well, first, I do think we should mention that it is a little bit different this week.
Oh, true, yeah.
So
first of all, I have moved. So the first two we've recorded each episode differently. So if you're going to each episode wondering why it sounds a little different, it's because we recorded the first episode all in the same room, and then James went back to LA for the second episode. Me and Jacob were in the same room, and now I have moved to Chicago. So we are doing this 100% remote with our pal Craigbot. So if
the fourth pillar of our team,
this is probably closest to what it's going to sound like long term. As with anything, if you have suggestions or comments, comment them anywhere, or hit us up on Instagram in the DMs, whatever you want to do. But if it sounds funkier than last week, that is what's going on.
Yes.
All right.
And also, because I moved this week, I mean, I've been in Chicago for just over 24 hours at this point. I have not had time to see Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. So my lovely co-hosts, Jacob and James here, who unfortunately did have to suffer through it, are going to fill me in full spoilers, and you are going to get fresh live reactions out of me about the movie of our generation,
which
Indiana Jones.
I think will be
Dial
fun.
of Destiny.
I think will be fun.
It'll be fun. They've got plenty to say about it on their own. You guys, you hear enough about me whenever Nintendo does anything. So
okay,
it'll be a right episode.
It'll be fun to hear the reactions of somebody who's only seen more restrained Indiana Jones movies, is how I'll say it.
Okay. Well, I love Indiana Jones, so
let's start the review. Okay, so I'll go first. So, I mean, this movie, the writing was on the wall. For context, I love James Mangold. I think he's I don't think this movie is a reflection of him.
I think it reeks of studio.
Yeah, which I think we're gonna get into later with the state of Lucasfilm talk. But this movie is well directed. It's well shot. It looks great. I mean, there are one thing I can say about this movie is that even though I did find them uninteresting, there are constant set pieces. It did feel like a quantity over quality kind of deal, but the movie is constantly moving and pushing itself, and I did enjoy that. I do think he's a good director. I can tell he's getting the most out of his actors. I know personally I'm not that much familiar with her, but I know a lot of people have some opinions on Phoebe Waller-Bridge.
I think she's pretty good. She does the show Fleabag.
Yeah,
I think she writes and stars in it, and she's really good in that.
She wrote No Time to Die. She was in Solo as the activist droid, who I know people hated, but I actually thought was fine.
She was fine.
Honestly, she's kind of a Solo apologist, anyway.
Yeah, I am. I'm a big Solo fan. This movie's pretty she's pretty good in this movie, and Harrison Ford is of course good in this movie. There's some other actors that are good. Mads Mikkelsen, who we're gonna laugh at later, is good in this movie. Yeah. But honestly, that's the best I can say. It's well made. The actors are good. But other than that, it's just like kind of just like a imitation more than anything.
Mm.
It just kind of feels like while I think Mangold is talented, he's just not Spielberg, for better or for worse. And you can't make an Indiana Jones movie that's not Spielberg, so it just kind of didn't land.
How would you compare it to something like Crystal Skull, which people also
So
kind of hate?
that's like a great direction because this movie literally has the exact same issues, in my opinion. It's distracted. It jumps the shark. The characters aren't as enjoyable. This movie somehow, in my opinion, and I think James would probably agree with me, jumps the shark more than Crystal Skull.
Wow.
Oh yeah,
Because Crystal Skull had like an alien show up and it blew. Who was it? It wasn't Tilda Swinton, was it?
No, it's
Kate Blanchett.
it's
Kate Blanchett.
Yeah,
And it's like blows her head off with knowledge.
yeah. This movie.
So it's worse. It's worse, definitely. You'd say.
I think that's up to interpretation. Honestly, like I think that's like an individual thing. But the ending of this movie just felt like I'm not gonna spoil it, but
You can spoil it.
no, we're not. We're doing spoiler free right now.
All right.
It's a little ludicrous. I'll say that.
I'm looking forward to hearing about that. I know very little.
I think this movie would be infinitely better if it was 20 minutes shorter. I am usually a person who is like a activist and a like proponent of long film, and I enjoy like a long runtime on a movie, but I don't enjoy a movie wasting my time. And this movie was 20 to 30 minutes too long. Legitimately, way too long. Like this movie could have been 2 hours and 15 minutes. It would have been way better. It had no right being as long as it did. It's just a massive nothing burger. I'd give it a 4 out of 10. It's
4 out of 10.
It's
What we gave something else a 4 out of 10 recently.
Elemental. It is worse than Elemental, definitely. I could see myself giving it a 3.
Wow. From James Mangold too. That's
yeah, and I love James Mangold. I think Logan is like the second best comic book movie ever made.
He did Ford v
And
Ferrari
he did
as well,
Ford v
didn't he?
Ferrari. He did Walk the Line.
I love that
with
movie.
Joaquin Phoenix.
Ford v Ferrari is awesome.
He's just awesome, and he's gonna make Swamp Thing, which his vision for it is awesome. He is like super inspired by Frankenstein for that movie. It's gonna be like a classic monster movie in like the DCU, which is awesome. I think that's something like you'll eat up, Liam.
Yeah, that
and like
sounds
his
cool.
vision for his Star Wars movie is also cool, but I don't trust
Ugh.
Lucasfilm's quality control, which we're gonna talk about later.
No.
So honestly, I hope he gets away from Lucasfilm, just like Patty Jenkins and Ryan Johnson's trilogy and Kevin Feige's Star Wars movie.
And about 8 other
and
movies.
About the Game of Thrones writers had a movie at one point. I would not be surprised if the movie died on the vine after this, because damn, this movie.
Star Wars is
If
such
you're not familiar, I have a
disaster
pull up
zone,
here.
man.
This movie is the 13th most expensive movie of all time. Cost $300 million to make. And
Wow.
it's insane.
Well, it's not making that
It
back.
may-
I can
it's
tell you
gonna-
I can tell you
its
that much right now.
projections is to make 600 million. Not 600 million, sorry. 60 million this weekend. So, unless this movie has incredible legs, which I kind of doubt because word of mouth is not good, it's not making its budget back.
No
Yeah.
way. At
So-
13th of all time, there's just
Yeah.
no shot. I mean, people hate this movie, man. People really hate this movie.
I can
All right, James. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10. James.
So you're
Yeah, it's a
changing it
3
to
out of 10.
3.
James, what is your opinion? Go ahead.
Okay.
You.
all right.
Spoiler free. And then we'll get into
Alright.
spoilers after you give your spiel.
I'll do spoiler free. So I'm just gonna go ahead and offer this
You
disclaimer.
sound so unenthused.
When I watched,
He sounds like he's got
Yeah.
a gun to his head.
yeah. Oh my gosh,
So
yeah.
give-
Craig Bot's holding a
give-
gun to my head.
the listeners here a idea of your relationship with Lucasfilm without diving too much into it.
Okay,
Oh.
okay. I won't like spew. But yes, as far as Lucasfilm is concerned, my love for movies was born out of Star Wars, like the original Star Wars trilogy. So I mean that's not something I'm ever gonna shake.
It's like that's like an MCU Spider-Man villain, like origin story.
Yeah, I know. And then with Indiana Jones, it was kind of funny. Just growing up, I watched Star Wars, and then it used to be back then. It was like, well, if you're talking about the big movie franchises, you would usually hop right from Star Wars to Indiana Jones, and loved those movies. Super fun. Um, Even Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I remember when I was pretty little, and like they announced that movie was coming out. I was super excited. I had a blast watching that movie.
For
When I was a
context, to
kid.
interject, our
Yeah.
father, James and I's dad, was in the military, and in
Oh
other
yeah.
nations, piracy is not illegal. So you can get copies of films before they release on box. You still have to buy them, but basically movies go to disc way easier there. And our dad, brought home a copy of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull months before it
Months.
even premiered. So he'd seen that movie
Yeah.
before like
I
99.99% of people, like even critics.
I whipped out my laptop and showed it to our cousin, and it was like I had fire because he was like, "It's not going to be Indiana Jones 4. It's going to be, Last Crusade." And then Hound Dog started playing. He was like, "No, wait, what?" So when I heard this movie was coming out, I was so worried because just fast forward into the history, modern Lucasfilm. What else is there to say as far as
We're
things
gonna
have
talk
been
about it. We're
a
gonna
bit?
talk about it.
There's been turmoil.
Yeah, keep it
We'll
moving.
get there. Yeah.
But I was very nervous. I was very nervous about this movie after how bumpy the road has been in the like kind of modern time with movies. So that really segues me into talking about how I feel about the movie. Um, I feel like there were a lot of people who put passionate work into this movie. I mean, you look at obviously it goes without saying John Williams does great. Um, you get to listen to John Williams
His score is
music,
actually
so
pretty
that's
good
an
in this movie.
immediate plus. The direction's not bad at all. The cinematography, at least to me, does not did not create the feeling of the other
course not.
movies. It seemed like it was trying to simulate
Yeah.
it, but in the same way, it did not feel like kind of like an authentic progression of what we've seen. It seemed, and this is even the case for the modern Lucasfilm Star Wars movies, it's trying so hard to look like the original stuff instead of visually evolving. And I felt that in this movie a decent amount.
It's like a skinwalker.
I
You
mean,
know,
it's just
it's you hear John Williams calling to you from the woods, and you're like, oh, cool,
Yeah,
a new Indiana Jones, and you get there, it's some
yeah, I
evil
mean,
deer monster rips
it's
your
just the
well,
throat out.
Hollywood
Hollywood
big
legacy sequel carbon copy equation that we've gotten used to.
and
I think we should talk at the end of this segment. We should talk about some legacy sequels and
oh,
where they go
Where
wrong
they
and stuff like
for
that,
sure.
and when they go right. My favorite movie of all time is technically a legacy sequel, so they can be done well.
But to wrap up my non-spoiler thoughts, um, there's a lot of passion, everything from the costume design to some of the set design. So when I start to kind of criticize this movie, that criticism really falls in the writing. It falls in the storytelling decisions. It falls in just the concepts that got off of the ground. So I just wanted to give that disclaimer. But as far as my actual thoughts on the movie, um, it was just it felt like an imitation of an Indiana Jones movie the entire time. It jumped the shark. It lacked the restraint of the previous movies. We'll talk about the shark jump in the
lack
spoilers.
the restraint of
Um,
Temple of Doom.
yes, I know exactly.
Someone's heart gets ripped out of their chest
And
and set on
that
fire.
feels like tame, grounded fantasy compared to what exists in this movie. And as far as just what they do with the character,
Oh,
I mean, it goes without saying that if you're gonna have a movie come back with like an old version of the protagonist, just assume his life is shit. If you're gonna
Well, if it's made by
I mean,
Disney,
that
then
being
why
said,
not?
it's the stereotypical like old age hero trope where they like deconstruct them for no reason, and I'm like, dude, I just want to see Indiana Jones
yeah,
be Indiana
but
Jones.
Phoebe Walker-Bridge was totally actually surprised. She surprised me. Um, I mean, I'm pretty much done with this franchise after this movie. If there's any spin-offs, but like,
Well,
if there was
to
a
interject briefly, there was a Indiana Jones TV show planned. It was in pre-production, and it was a big red flag because they canceled it before this movie came out. So,
well, it was like I
Mm.
was watching and I
So
was like, I feel
unnecessary.
like they're setting up, Phoebe Waller-Bridge and Indiana
probably by
Jones
her.
story a little bit. But I was like, but I wouldn't mind that. I mean, I wouldn't watch it because I'm out.
You would
But
watch it for the
like,
pod.
I would watch it for the pod, and I wouldn't mind because she was a
I would watch it if it was a
yeah.
job, but I'm not gonna.
I mean, she was a great actress. Her writing, I actually thought was pretty serviceable.
Oof, I disagree,
Um,
man. I
okay,
disagree.
we'll get into it. But I guess I'll just say this about Indy.
She's written
No, but
some
like
great stuff.
her
Is the thing. It's
in this movie, without spoiling much, her entire motivation is to steal shit for money. Like she is like at one point in the movie, she basically confesses that she's like a massive bag chaser, and she's willing.
She
And she's
does.
good for
willing.
her.
Well, it good for her, I guess. But like, she's willing to let her godfather, who admittedly is like estranged from her, but her godfather like is left to die or at the very least be framed by Nazis because she wants to sell a trinket at a private auction. Like,
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a super
No, I
likable
mean, I'll
protag.
say this, like some of that early stuff, I was like, this is trying way too hard to establish her as like not a buddy, not a sidekick.
yeah.
Like, look at the betrayals. But her writing got better. There was a moment where I said, if she does her betrayal crap here, I'm officially done with her character. At the very last moment, she came in and they did
Don't
with her
spoil it.
character arc exactly what you would expect. Yeah, I'll stop
Well,
there. I'll be vague.
Yeah, why don't you just give us your rating and then
Four,
let's just jump into spoilers because
four.
I feel like
It's a four.
you're
It's
sitting on
just
a 4.
um they don't create a compelling enough reason for Indiana Jones to come back. They keep his life stagnant and miserable just to have another adventure. And it's like even he
Sounds like Luke
except the thing
Skywalker.
about Luke Skywalker, without getting too deep into that, is it the tragedy that was set up for him. I mean, at least it progresses his story. It has something to say. This movie just keeps Indiana Jones his life in cryo freeze just so a fifth movie can happen. It's
yeah,
like
I totally agree. The Last Crusade should have been the Last Crusade.
like the thing about Han Solo and what happened with like, his son and Leia is it's like, it's fine for a story to have tragedy. It's fine for, a happily I even don't mind if like a happily ever after ending maybe gets undone to say interesting things because I mean that's how life is. There's not a happily ever after when you finish like your initial arc. But if you're going to unravel a good ending or better endings, which I'll talk more about later, because yes, I think even Crystal Skull is a more appropriate ending to the franchise than this movie.
Wow.
I mean,
I
the ending
you
of
had
three,
reason.
the ending of 3 is literally perfect.
The ending
Like,
of 3 is perfect.
he learns his lesson. He learns to let it go in that like a profound scene, and then he rides off into the sunset. It doesn't get more conclusive than that.
Literally.
If Crystal Skull is Toy Story 4, then this movie is Lightyear. Is
This
kind
movie
of
is
how
the
I'll
inevitable
stop
Toy
there.
Story 5 that we're gonna get, which
Yeah,
is literally a
I'm
thing.
Oh man. Which we can get into that when we talk about some of the stuff Disney's doing in
but
news.
4 out of 10. There's a lot of good filmmaking here, but the whole is not greater. Like the whole is
And
less
I
than the
will
sum of the
admit,
parts.
2 more things before we go into spoilers. The prologue is great.
Yeah, agreed.
If you can get behind de-aging, which I am a massive hater of, I'm gonna be honest with you.
At least he's alive,
That's kind of a saving grace for me is that the original
Personally,
person's
the
alive.
de-aging was pretty uncanny here. It's not Mandalorian levels. We obviously we never said our opinion on that, but I was never a fan of like using like NPC Luke Skywalker and like just cast someone new. I love Alden as Han Solo. So if you want
They
me
should have
to
done
be
Sebastian Stan
really
from the-
annoying, you already have cast young Harrison Ford in a Lucasfilm project, and he did a great job. So I know people love to see Harrison Ford be young Indiana Jones again, but it was distracting. And the writing in the prologue is really good. Like you can easily tell it is the most revised part of the script that's gotten the most
Oh yeah.
attention. The dialogue is snappy, the characterization's great, but I was just distracted. And I mean, it's probably a little nitpicky, but I was just distracted by Indiana Jones looking like a video game character. Like it distracted me. Like there was one
It's
sequence. There was one sequence
Stop
where
right there,
he
criminal
got on the
scum.
train and he literally runs like a turtle. And I like
oh,
me
I was done.
and my friend who I saw it
What?
with, we were both like, what the hell? Why is he running like that?
That was my first seed of worry when he did like a
Like he does like a
CWCG
jiggy.
model
It's
run.
really funny. It's really funny. The one thing about this movie is that it can be really funny sometimes.
It seems like a great
Well,
drunk
But if
watch.
you're gonna do a drunk Indiana Jones watch, go watch Crystal Skull. Like this movie is boring. My biggest problem with the movie is that it's boring.
We get into spoilers.
Let's get into spoilers. Okay.
We are in
So
spoiler
I think
territory. All right, so
let's just do a walkthrough.
walk me. Just give me like
Okay,
an
so
abridged
the prologue
walkthrough.
opens
Yeah.
up in World War II, Nazis, classic Indiana Jones stuff, and they're going after this like blade, which is like the blade that got Christ's blood, and it kind of reminded me of
You mean the spear of
Yes.
Longinus?
yes, it
Something like
reminded
that.
me of like if any of you watched Legends of Tomorrow season 2, where there's like
Yes.
the blood that drew the spear that drew Christ's blood, like all the legends are going after it, and it has like destiny altering abilities. That's like the impression the characters are under. Turns out it's like a red herring, and there's this thing called the Dial of Destiny. Have you ever seen? I forget what it's called, but it's like that really ancient device that's like beyond its years in ancient history, and it's like technically a computer. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes. Yes, I know what you're
Liam?
talking about.
It's
Kind of. I can envision what you're talking
It's
about.
basically the inspiration, if not the exact device that the Dial of Destiny is in this movie. It's like an ancient dial clock thing that is like insanely sophisticated.
Only
and
that's all it was.
like genuinely inspired some of the innovations made today. So that's definitely the inspiration for the device. But the catch here is that here the dial can compute, because it's a computer, it can compute like fissures in time. So this Nazi scientist, who I forgot the name of because he's generic, played by Mads Mikkelsen, is going after it. Well, he's going after the spear. Him and Indiana Jones both realize it's a red herring, and he's like, well, wait a second. We found this dial, because you guys don't know, Hitler had like a fascination with like artifacts and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which that's real.
Yeah,
he did.
so
that
He
was
was
needed.
obsessed with like
and once
the
again,
occult.
the prologue of this movie is like actually genuinely pretty good. So
It's fun.
this Nazi regiment is going after an artifact that Hitler found interest in, which was Spear Longitis, I believe. And in turn, they find this dial, and Mads Mikkelsen character is very interested in it. And then Indy and his buddy, who, by the way, we've never met. He's played by Dobby. Dobby's actor, Zola's actor. Let me get his name. I'm sorry. Toby Jones,
isn't
thank
it?
you. He is Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character's godfather. Well, no, real father. And Indiana Jones becomes her
Yeah.
godfather. We never met this guy. Point is that the two of them are like bumbling around. And the prologue's pretty good, honestly. I mean, James, do you have any thoughts on it other than the one thing that I cannot wait to talk about?
Yeah. My only thoughts on the prologue is
I think
heard
I
a
know
lot
what
of
you're
people
gonna
say
talk about.
that the prologue is the Indiana Jones movie you wish the rest of the movie was. I totally agree. So it was a pretty good replication of that. And I will say, on a storytelling level, I enjoyed getting to see Indy revel in the fact that the Nazis were losing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was good.
That was I just enjoyed seeing Indy basically being this like vigilante on the other side of the lines in like Nazi Germany. Where it's like he isn't waiting for the Allies to, take over. He's over there already on the job. So I enjoyed seeing Indy's very personal beef with the Nazis. And a lot of characters, unfortunately, I think their writing peaked in this prologue.
No,
Matt
no.
Mikkelsen.
Undeniably, this movie has peaked in its first 20 minutes.
But I enjoyed the writing for Mads Mikkelsen more in this
sure,
prologue
yeah.
than everything that comes after. I mean,
Well, I know
Oh.
I know that's a pet peeve with you, Jacob, is that you hate when like a movie is really, really good and like the first, maybe even third,
No,
and then as soon as it
It's
starts to
like
go
it-
downhill, I know
can't
it's like
be.
drives
a
me
it's like a
insane
big
because
no for you.
I would rather watch a bad movie than a frustrating movie. I cannot fucking stand a movie that
Or a
is
boring movie,
constantly
maybe.
making me think about what it could have been. Because it's like, if you're not gonna put in the effort to realize your ideas, I'm not going to. So I'm gonna stop paying attention to your movie because it's fucking pissing me off. And this movie is that. Like the first 20 minutes is like really well written. I'm like, and I knew going in that it's like a red herring. Like I didn't have like preconceived notions or anything, but like I knew people were like, yeah, the prologue's great, but prepare yourself.
It'd be like if The Force Awakens started with like the Death Star, which is like what like the Lego video
It's
game did, where the Lego Force Awakens game starts with the Death Star levels, and it's like don't be mistaken. This is not the movie.
I
This
mean,
is like the end of Return. You
I am a
know,
massive
this is
fan
the
of
end
it.
of a better movie.
I'm a massive fan of it, but if it's one thing I can compare it to is how people feel about Man of Steel. Like I'm a big Man of Steel fan,
Oh yeah.
but people are like, I love the Krypton stuff, but after that, the movie sucks. Which is like I completely disagree with, but I think it's a valid criticism of the movie.
A valid
Because I think there's an
comparison.
argument to be made that the Krypton stuff is the best part of that movie. Personally,
It's the
I
most
think
cohesive.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. I like when he's
Flight
learning to be
Zod is my
Superman. I think
favorite
that's
part of
probably
that
my
movie. But
favorite
there's a
part.
lot of people
like
out
flight
there.
and all that.
Oh.
It's pretty good.
I think there are. I think it's
You
like
are
kind
not
of a
alone.
tired argument that's kind of fizzled out. But when the movie came out, I vividly remember people being like, "Oh, the Krypton stuff was awesome," but after that, it fizzled out. That's how I feel about this movie.
Yeah.
Um,
Now, when we're talking about the
Oh,
prologue, should we just go ahead and talk
Yes.
about the best part of the
Okay.
prologue?
So, for context, I am infamously bad about like cracking in movie theaters.
We saw
Oh.
Halloween Ends in a theater, and there was this one scene. I think the character goes like, "I hope you find love." And Jacob, I mean, it was like
Yeah,
he was having a
I
seizure.
don't usually
He
like
was
laugh that
laughing
hard.
so
Like, I'm
hard.
I get like you can get a good chuckle out of me, but I'm pretty hard to like get a good laugh out of. But once in a while, there's be a movie that'll just like find like a deep like nerve in my brain, and it happened. Halloween Ends. It happened in Ant-Man, but fucking MODOK was like, "Am I a dick?"
It's never
at me,
too
I'm
late
such
to
a
stop
dick.
being a dick, MODOK. That movie
Worse
sucks, man.
than
That movie
worse than
sucks.
Indy 5. So that's my glowing recommendation, is that Dial of Destiny is better than Quantumania.
Indiana Jones 5, at least 1 point better than Ant-Man Quantumania.
Yeah.
Which there's also in news. There's some Jonathan
Yeah,
Majors
so
stuff to
it's
talk
just
about
like-
too. We
but-
got
funny
more to
moment
talk
we were
about this
talking
week
about
than I
the prologue.
realized.
Completely knocked out, and then the next like 20 minutes later, because there's a time jump, obviously, because we go from young to old Indy, and he's just walking around. His face, like he gets like legitimately
he doesn't just get
obliterated.
knocked out.
Like the way James described it is he used to be like red mist, and
How hard he gets
like,
hit on the top of his
like you
train.
know in
He gets
like
hit.
Wolverine when they're like on the train and he like throws the guy up. If I got the right movie, right?
Yes, that's the
Yeah,
Wolverine.
and he by the way,
where he's in
James
Japan.
Mangold directed that movie too. And he throws the guy up and he like gets like obliterated. That basically happens, but instead he like then
But like a metal bar
Yeah,
or
it's like-
something. Like
it's like the Uncharted train sequence where like you're like constantly like dodging little. Which damn. On that note, a James Mangold Uncharted movie would have been fantastic.
that would have been fantastic.
I have.
So it sounds like you
haven't.
haven't lost confidence in him as a director. It's weird because like This movie, it should have been such a banger. James Mangold is a great director. I think Phoebe Waller-Bridge, if she wrote it, which sounds like she might have, is a good writer. Harrison Ford is not dead, so he's
I
still
love
Indiana
Mads
Jones,
Mikkelsen.
and it's cool. Mads Mikkelsen is great.
Yeah.
It's like it's one of those movies that are so infuriating where everything should be great, and somehow, somewhere
one
along the
thing I want to
way,
bring up
it
is
just
that
started sucking
Phoebe
huge
Waller-Bridge
dick,
did
and no
not
one
write
did
this
anything
movie.
about it.
But this movie has 4 writers. And you
Feel
can
it.
Didn't.
feel that
Okay.
this movie has different visions for the characters. Like James was talking about Helen, that's her name, right? Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Helena. Talking about Helena's
Helena.
like character motivations and how like
Helena.
he was glad
Helena.
that they didn't go in a direction. But it felt like someone wrote the beginning of her character and someone wrote the end. And whoever wrote those 2 parts had different ideas for her motivations and moral code. Because like I don't know. She has inconsistent writing for sure. It's not like a clear arc, and that might just be like a pacing and an editing issue. But she just has like a abrupt change of heart. And like even when she has changed of heart, she'll still be like there's one point in the movie where which we can talk about later has some comedic elements where they like she like double crosses Mads Mikkelsen and she's like, "Yeah, I'm still going to sell this for money." And it's like, "Dude, you just changed your mind about siding with Indy." Like I don't know. It's just frustrating. It's just a frustrating movie.
To go back to the train scene, the infamous train scene, because I've seen that's like one of the things I knew going into this recording is that Mads Mikkelsen gets
Gets up.
And, like,
obliterated by a train and then
Don't get
regens like
Doesn't even
Deadpool for the
regen.
next scene, and he doesn't even have like a bruise. So what? My question is, what do you think is worse, Mads Mikkelsen
we talked
walking
about
off
this
the
last
train
night. I
or
still
the Crystal
think
Skull?
the
I-
refrigerator is less believable. But
Oh,
yeah, obviously, I mean it's a
obviously,
nuclear
yeah.
bomb. But
And then not even it launches it like 50 feet up in the air, and he hits the ground 6 times and then tumbles. He shouldn't
Yeah,
walk out of there. He
but
should
it's the
leak out of there. Like
I
he
mean,
should be paced.
it's still
Radioactive
unbelievable.
glowing
And
paste.
unbelievable is still like there's only like a certain threshold you can cross. And in my opinion, Mads Mikkelsen getting pulverized by a bar is just as unbelievable as a nuclear bomb because neither of them should have happened. It's like when people like critique Batman and they're
So-
like, "Well, I don't know how Michael Keaton is running around in the Flash." It's like, bro, Batman is like evading Doomsday at like in his like late 50s in BVS. None of this can happen. So like, stop trying to justify one part of it. And I can't. I feel the same way about this. It's like both of these things are like the same difference. It's like one of them is a nuclear bomb, and one of them is like a 50-mile-an-hour train that like launches him off, pulverizes him, and sends him into a valley. But
Turn him into like mush.
yeah, he falls off the train. Like,
He
like,
he
falls off
falls
the
into
train.
a valley
Yeah.
too.
And like
So he's on the train. He gets hit by a
Yes.
bar. He flies off. Presumably
and,
hits
like,
the
I
ground
mean-
at Mach
and,
speed, and
no,
then he's
and the
just
next scene he's like,
he
Dr.
doesn't even have a
Jones.
Band-Aid
And I'm
in
like,
the
you
train.
gotta be kidding me.
I guess the reasoning is that it's a time jump. But like, dude,
No
like
way.
here's how bad it is. I legitimately thought it was a red herring. Like I was like, I thought they were doing like some like time travel shit where the Mads Mikkelsen
That's
at
really
the
funny.
beginning of the movie was like Mads Mikkelsen at the end of the timeline. And the Mads Mikkelsen you meet halfway through is like the Mads Mikkelsen you meet at like his start. I thought it was like some reverse Flash season 1 stuff.
Which would have
'Cause I'm
been
like,
a great twist.
That would have been kind of cool, yeah. He should have been like the fish from SpongeBob in
No,
the chocolate episode.
that's exactly how he is.
He's like the full body cast.
He even says
Look
a
up paper
line.
skin
He
and
even
glass
says a line
bones.
that almost seems like it would set it up, where he's like,
Yeah,
"See you in
I
the past, Dr.
legitimately-
Jones." And I was like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
okay.
maybe they're actually
James and
gonna
I
do
were in
it."
separate theaters. We both legitimately thought that it was like a reverse Flash in season 1 thing. Where like the reverse Flash you meet later in the show is technically the beginning of his story. Because it was so unbelievable that I legitimately was like, dude, there's no way that guy got up. There's no way. I don't know.
Yeah, they have
because
to
they
have thought that through.
because
How
they
does
had
that get
bigger
past
fish to fry
the
with
writer's room?
problems
I
that come
kinda
up
think it
later in
just
this movie, which I think
it
we
should
should
be
touch
so
upon.
obvious.
And not just that, but I'm gonna kind of offer a disclaimer here, which Jacob you kind of got into. Indiana Jones movies have always had some bombastic shit in them. They've always been a bit cartoonish. I mean, Temple of Doom, they jump out of a plane in an inflatable raft and like land on a mountain and just slide down. I mean, there's goofy stuff.
There's always
But
been dumb shit in these
I
movies.
mean, there's a difference between fun cartoonish stuff and then stuff that is just so
I mean,
absurd that it pulls
it's
you
just the
out of
concept of
taking the movie
it's the
seriously.
concept of
The nuke
suspension of
fridge.
disbelief.
Now, obviously, like, yes, the nuke fridge completely jumps that. But I will say this about the freaking nuke fridge. I mean, it's funny. It's fun to poke fun at. It's iconically stupid. The thing
It's
about
iconically stupid.
Mads Mikkelsen going out like he's playing Subway Surfers is that this is your spooky villain. You've brought out Mads Mikkelsen, the king of evil staring in movies, and you're building him up, and then he just goes out like Yosemite Sam, getting tricked by Bugs Bunny. And I'm like,
I can't believe they added a scene where Mads Mikkelsen was chasing Indiana Jones, and
I'm-
Indiana Jones paints a realistic road on a wall. And
I'm gonna
Mads
get-
Mikkelsen
I'm gonna
runs
get-
right into
I'm gonna
it,
get that
turns
clip
flat
of
like a
him
pancake,
getting whacked by like
gets smacked
the
up.
thing on the train and add like Tom's yell from Tom and
No,
Jerry.
the moment this movie goes on digital, that's gonna turn into a meme. I promise you.
Like, ow!
I promise you, it will be. It will be. You
We're
will
only in the
find it
prologue.
on Twitter. I guarantee it.
I mean,
Look, if you have a list like
It's
us,
almost
go see the
worth
first 20
me
minutes of this
going
movie
to see
and then
it
walk out
just for that.
Like,
I almost walked out of this movie,
And walk out.
I never do that. Yeah, we'll get there.
Well, you texted us. You were out of the theater.
yeah.
You said, "I have to take a
Okay,
break,
I
man."
did.
I think
I had
You're
to
taking
have
a
fun.
mental
We
health
should move
break
on.
at Indiana Jones 5.
Okay.
With 30.
We should move
Texting
on.
the homies.
Now,
Okay, so let's.
Yeah, we're
I guess
nearing
You wanna
40
go to the
minutes
next
of
part?
Indiana Jones
you
talk.
can go. Well, yeah, but I guess like I was just gonna say that as far as the whole
Hold on, let's.
next like hour of the movie, I'm not gonna have a lot to say because the movie had nothing to say. The whole second act of this movie is just perpetuating itself. It is just a tired, depressed Indiana Jones who's like just kind of doing this to go through the motions for the sake of it, which he even becomes aware of by the end. But I guess that is to say, like, I'm gonna talk about the choices they made for where Indy is when we find him in this movie. But there's going to be just a certain point to this movie where I say, and then a bunch of, and then this happened, and then this happened
Yeah.
writing occurs, which is what the majority of this movie is,
I mean,
and not in a good way. It's
this
just
movie-
kind of like these people that Indy doesn't really.
Mhm.
It just there was not a good group for the adventure in this movie. And I think one thing I can say about Indy 4 is you have John Hurt, you have Marion back. I mean, you do have, Shia LaBeouf as Mutt Williams, but at least there's
Oh,
interesting things they're
God.
exploring with
Oh,
that character.
God.
This
Oh,
movie
God.
didn't. This movie did not. I mean, it's interesting to explore Indy
Kind of,
having a
I
son that
guess.
he didn't know about, even if the
Dude.
performance you don't.
Should we just
you
talk
don't
about that?
dig it. But this
Talk
movie.
about.
Talk about
Liam,
Mutt.
do you know this?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's
Well,
a
let's go.
scene. There's a
Let's do it.
scene
Here we go.
where
I do not know this. I didn't know Mutt had anything to do. Did they
But
retcon
there's a
it?
scene like, what would you do if you go back in time? Because they're going with time travel. And he's like, well, I'd get my son to not enlist in the military. And Phoebe Waller-Bridge is like, why? He's like, because he died. So Mutt is dead. They killed Mutt off screen.
They killed Mutt off screen.
They killed
And
Mutt
I think
off
like
screen.
they tried to use it to like.
I mean, I don't
Oh,
think
yeah,
there
there's
are
one-
character.
ton of
There's one with us
hardcore
right
Mutt
now.
fans. That's
know.
not going to be as bad as
They didn't do it to contextualize his character.
Yeah.
that. So Mutt
Homeless
dies,
marriage
and then
fell apart, of course,
he turned
because
all
God forbid one of these
sad and
characters be
wrinkled.
happy. So yeah, no,
No.
no.
But Mutt
Does
dies.
he end up
and then-
doing
and
that?
Bridge
Does he?
didn't
Does
get
he
like a-
stop Mutt?
We didn't get like a Steve looking at Peggy through the window in Endgame
Yeah.
moment.
So
Wow. That's my hero.
But-
Well, I'm glad it's a good send off that he's. Doesn't he? Don't. All right. Now, I could be getting gaslit by the internet, or the movie could be this crazy. I have heard
We'll get
that
there.
they go back, like 2,000 years in the past to Roman times, and Indiana Jones says to somebody, probably Helena, "Just leave me here. I want to die in this Roman times." And she's like, "No, Indy, you can't do that. We got to take
No,
you
I
back
just
to the
can't even get there
Okay.
yet.
future."
We'll get
He
to
goes,
can't.
"Okay," and then
No,
that's
it's not because
it has
he
to
doesn't
wait.
say okay.
We can't. We
She
can't.
just robs
that-
him of
is
the
that what
choice,
happens?
knocks him out, and he wakes up in his apartment.
I'm gonna abstain from talking
that's
about the third
fucked
act of this
up.
movie yet.
Dude, why?
I just can't
Because he's like having like
because there's
he's
nothing
having, like,
left
a-
for
like a
him.
Why does he want to
historical
die in
moment where
Roman
he's like,
times?
this is where I'm meant to die, and he's like basking in the thought of like dying amongst history, and he's like, but he also is like not
No, but
understanding that like if he
I mean, I guess that's kind of
he like
cool.
wants to stay there though, so he's not like grasping the thought he's gonna like destroy space and time. Well, no, they literally do though, because like afterwards he's like, "Why
I don't
didn't
think
you
I
let
don't
me
think the
stay?"
writers of
And she's like,
Dial of
"Well, you
Destiny
would
were
have
thinking about
raptured
the
space
space
and time for one," and he
time
literally goes,
continuum.
"So what?" Like,
yeah, like Indiana Jones.
What the hell? Yeah, that's my hero.
The
I don't
man
give a
who
shit if
wants
I
to
destroy
preserve
all of time
history,
and
who
space. I
fights to
want to
get things
die
in
with the
museums,
Romans.
who literally won't destroy this dangerous artifact that his friend went insane over. I assume because he cares about preserving history, he's like, screw it. We're gonna go in, or it's Indie Point, it's like Flashpoint, but for
This
Indiana
movie-
Jones,
okay,
Um,
let's just get to the let's get
you want to
let's
get
to the
nuts?
He gets
Let's get
fat.
nuts.
of this movie because that's
Michael
one of them.
Keaton is Batman. He comes.
Okay, fine.
Okay, there's one thing I want to talk about.
Okay,
Well, two
And then,
things. One,
we
like,
do gotta wrap it up a little bit.
serious
We
and one
gotta
not
get to
serious.
news.
So the
and
first thing
whatnot.
is like James Mangold is perfect for this story. Like Logan is such a nuanced story about like a hero aging and like what comes with that. And in this movie, none of that's there. Like,
And even tragedy occurring, like tragedy, like your
Yes.
life not going the way you wanted it
Yes,
to,
like
losing
this-
the people you care
I
about.
understand why he wanted to do this movie. I understand why Lucasfilm wanted him to do this movie. But it baffles me because he did that so masterfully with Logan. The perfect send off to that character, which we're going to talk about later. And yet he wasn't able to translate that here. And I don't understand why. Because
I do.
it makes no sense. Like,
That's
like,
what I was
at
talking
the
about.
most
It's
I
just
do
basic
not
level,
makes
think-
I
this
don't
movie
think
is
the
bad and
film
it makes
about
no
cars
sense
and
because it should
racing.
be
And James Mangold
should be great.
made me incredibly invested in Le Mans. I give a shit about Indiana Jones. I really believe that is within his capability to
Yeah.
put out a good product and make this story, which he seems like he's tailor made to make. Like, the problem is, I guess we can kind of transition here a little bit, is that the common denominator is not these directors. Ryan Johnson made the highest rated episode of TV ever, and in my opinion, my favorite. And he made The Last Jedi. J.J. Abrams, while I have negative opinions of him, to give him the benefit of the doubt, I love Star Trek. I love Star Trek '09, and Lost until the very end was a good like TV show. J.J.
Hack
had
adjacent.
talent.
Yeah.
So did James Mangold. So did Jon Favreau. So did Dave Filoni. So did like
A lot. All
Ron
of them.
Howard.
Ron Howard.
Like Chris Lord and
there's-
Phil Miller. We
Sam
just
Raimi.
talked about that. Like all of these incredible directors and visionaries are just not doing their job, to put it bluntly.
There's not an environment. There's clearly not an environment there that is fostering like the
Yes,
best
and-
from these creatives. There's some kind of process here, or some kind of meddling, or some kind of managing that is just it's clogging them up. It's getting them. It's their
For
best
sure.
work is not getting across, which because we're kind of talking now a little bit about
Yes,
Lucas,
let's
like
just transition
Lucasfilm,
into that.
and And I'll also, you know, because that kind of goes
good
in tandem with
transition a
me. We're
little
talking
bit.
about the third act of this movie because we also started to talk about that a little bit. I Oh my god. With the third act of this movie, I'll just start there. I was watching this movie and I was like, okay, they have, you know, undone, you know, another ending to an Indiana Jones movie. You basically have him go through a very similar story arc instead of just leaving well enough alone. So I really was just not into the
I mean,
movie.
it does go back to like the Lucasfilm thing though.
But at least at least when I was watching it, I was like, it kind of respects the fabric that these movies are
just
made out
disagree,
of.
man.
It's operating within well, that opinion very quickly changed when all of a sudden restraint went out the window, and somehow it's like this movie had a somehow Palpatine returned moment for
Oh
me,
my god.
where instead of any restraint, let's just literally have Indiana
movie.
Jones and a plane full of Nazis fly into 200 BCE and, you know, shoot these ancient soldiers with like guns and have these people in Nazi uniforms fall out of the plane, and somehow this isn't destroying the timeline, and it's like, and we're not even going to talk about it, and like all this craziness, and I'm just like, this is
How did they
jumping the
not find
shark.
like one?
Like,
How did they not find?
I mean, imagine if
Once
in
again, I know I'm getting nitpicky with this movie, but
And
I
a
get nitpicky
series
with
that
movies
has already
that
jumped
don't
the shark.
earn like my time and respect.
But,
How on earth?
like,
How on earth
imagine
did
if
they
in The
not find
Last
one
Crusade,
bullet in the sand and be like, wait a second, the Nazis went back in
Yeah.
time. How did that happen?
okay, can you imagine if in The Last Crusade, Indy's looking over the chalices, he's trying to pick the Holy Grail, and then all of a sudden, like, God walked in and was like, Indy. Like that was the lack of restraint that this movie had. Yeah, where
It's
it's
Monty
like,
Python.
it's like,
Indy, I'm giving you a
it's like
sacred
time
quest.
travel. It's like, you know, I mean,
Indiana
it's
Jones
fine,
is
but like,
of
I
course,
even
my lord.
pitched this to Jacob last night. A more restrained Indiana Jones movie would have probably done something a bit more restrained, where maybe Indy sees this fissure in time, and maybe he sees like the silhouette of somebody. And okay, we'll talk about this. Another moment of a lack of restraint. They turn Archimedes himself into a glup
He's
shitto
not-
in this movie.
Archimedes.
For those of you, hold on. For those of you who hold on. For those of you who
I
do
feel
not
like we use
know,
it in
because
every
we use
single
this term a
episode.
lot.
With-
A glup.
So
Jacob, why don't you
glup shitto-
explain to the
Every
audience
episode, 'cause I was
very
not
We
briefly
talked
what a
about
glup
Glupshido in
shitto
Flash.
is?
Glupshido is this concept where
I think we
it was,
have.
it was
Yeah.
a tweet that
If you
I
don't know what a
forget who made the
Glupshido
tweet.
is,
It's
I'm
like a
sorry.
viral tweet where this guy talked about Mandalorian, and it's like the Dave Filoni style of writing, where it's like, oh my god, look, Glupshido has showed up, and like Glupshido is a fill in the blank. It's like Zeb and like Sabine. It's like, dude,
Star Wars fans
write
are,
yeah,
your
holy
own
shit, it's
story.
Glupshido!
So in this movie, James is not lying. Archimedes has Glupshido writing. It's like, oh my god, look, it's Archimedes.
He's gonna meet Archimedes.
like Flash had
It was
Can you
like when
imagine the theater sees
the
Archimedes, they
Flash
pop
had
off like they see
Archimedes!
Captain
Glupshido
America pick
writing.
up Thor's hammers.
Like
Holy shit! It's
Glupshido-
Archimedes!
it got there, yeah.
he's not lying.
Yes!
Like this movie somehow found a way to
It
make
did.
Archimedes feel like a cameo. He
Like a big reveal.
like if you changed his like scene entrance
like-
to him coming out of a Doctor Strange portal, it would not have felt any differently.
That's really funny.
And like they don't even like it's like how people were joking about like people freaking out about Albert Einstein showing up in Oppenheimer and like cheering. And it's like
Yes.
the Kingsman credit scene where they tease Hitler like a
That's what
sequel
I'm gonna
villain.
cheer when Einstein
Like-
shows
and
up.
I, in separate theaters, thought of how if you guys don't know, like the Kingsman is this prequel to Kingsman, which is a very good movie. All three of us like it. And in the end credit scene of that movie, it takes place in World War One, if I'm correct. In the end credit scene of that movie, Adolf Hitler himself shows up, like an end credits tease, like Thanos in Avengers, and it's like, what is going on in Hollywood? where like we have Archimedes and
So, like,
Adolf
that's what
Hitler
this movie
showing up.
did.
Like,
You know what? Now that I think about it, Adolf Hitler, he
well,
glove
like
shadowed
there's,
Indiana
there's a
Jones,
way
did he
to do
not?
it. Like this
In
movie,
Last Crusade,
That's like a
this
way.
movie,
signed a book
yeah,
for Indiana
this
Jones. It's
movie
kind of a little
has
glove shadow
a
moment.
very
Like,
difference
whoa,
between
it's Hitler.
interesting, and I'll give this movie credit. It
And
has a very,
I don't think it's
very
always
cool
a bad thing, but I think that was probably a glove
twist
shadow
of
adjacent moment.
like perception for the villain's motive. So the villain is trying to get his hands on the Dial of Destiny to go back and win World War II. And you think you'd go back and kill, like, you know, FDR or Truman or yeah, you think
Or
he would go
Oppenheimer.
back and kill someone like that. Instead, he wants to go out back and kill Adolf Hitler so that he can become Fuhrer. And he basically has like the textbook and like knows like the beat by beat of where Hitler went wrong. Because he was such a close advisor
I thought that was
of
kind of
Hitler.
interesting, actually.
My only problem with it though is that they show his motivation like right as the climax happens.
That's kind of cool, yeah.
Like this movie just takes too long to get to its points, which sometimes are not bad points. And it's just like I don't know, this movie just
Also,
has
I think it
so
would've
many
been much.
pacing issues. Like the funniest thing about this movie to me is that the villains are just like omniscient. Mads
So-
Mikkelsen knows where Indiana Jones is 100% of the time. Liam, and it's not like plot coincidence. I shit you not. Helena and Indy are in the middle of the
He has like a
Mediterranean Ocean.
psychic link to him.
And Mads Mikkelsen just shows up without explanation. There's no like tracking. They didn't know where they were going. Like they legitimately throw a dart at the Mediterranean and go there, and by coincidence is where Indiana Jones's boat is. And like they just like magically find like the hotel that they're at. It's just so dumb. This movie just my problem with this movie is that if you're not gonna think about
you know,
it,
we were talking.
I'm not going to.
Well,
Yep, there it is.
to wrap up before we hit an hour of dunking on the dial here. Let's we'll give
I'm gonna
you
go with
got
4
Jacob, you're 3 out of
because,
10. James,
again,
you're still 4 out of 10.
There was a lot of effort.
honestly
I
seems
feel
a
like,
little
put
generous.
into so many of the filmmaking departments in this movie.
He's trying so hard.
But you know, we were talking about the third act. We were talking about Lucasfilm. There is just a lack of restraint in some of these instances of knowing what is acceptable for these worlds
Mhm.
as they've been built. It's like, let's just have Palpatine come back. No explanation for that. You know, let's just actually have Indiana Jones like travel
Mhm.
back to 200 BC. And it's like there's some things where you shouldn't jump that far because you start to feel like really expensive
I think
fan
we should
fiction.
talk about like Liam's whole point of legacy sequels, which is like this movie is coming out in proximity with Top Gun Maverick, and it's like, dude, the amount of difference in delicacy and taste, and honestly, in my opinion, just like outright understanding of the
Banger
source
alert.
material is insane. And it's like I think a big part of that is like Tom Cruise. And I know like I'm kind of taking like a bit of a tangent here, but like before this movie
Mhm.
played, there was like this behind the scenes trailer for Mission Impossible 7. And it showed a train sequence and how they did that and how they drove a train off a bridge and how they filmed like actual like combat action scenes on a train moving at a high speed. And I'm like, oh god. Like the moment I saw it, I'm like, dude, the next movie I'm about to watch is gonna show me like an uninspired cookie cutter CGI action sequence that just does not have that level of delicacy on a train. And it's exactly what I got.
And then Indy runs like a little gremlin, like a little CG gremlin.
Well,
Yes,
not
please.
even Mission Impossible or Maverick. Let's talk about, if you'll allow me, 2049, which is a legacy sequel starring Harrison Ford as a grumpy older version of a hit character from the 80s as Deckard. Which, I mean, if you look at the difference of how it was done, and here,
Yeah.
like you mentioned, Indiana Jones just
They
sort of
undid
seemed like
his
his life
growth
was on
just to make a
pause,
5th movie happen.
or he went. I think James said cryo freeze or something, and they did. It was a logical conclusion
I mean,
in
reanimating him.
Last Crusade for his story to end, but they felt like they brought him back just again for money. Just have
It's
Indiana
just
Jones 5
execution.
versus in Blade Runner, which is honestly it sounds not totally dissimilar because instead of uh an Indiana Jones mutt dying, which is it's still funny, and Marion and him getting divorced. Deckard, spoilers for Blade Runner 2049 if you haven't seen it. He is estranged from his daughter, and his wife died, but his wife dying and his
Like
daughter and his relationship to them
the themes.
are
Yeah.
they're not just thrown in there to explain why he hasn't done anything and why he's sad and living in a it's central. The whole movie, yeah, the whole movie is about this family and what happened to them and why they acted the way they did and what it means for the entire world. And then at the end, the whole like the gut punch of the movie is that Officer K, Ryan Gosling's character, chooses to follow none of the orders he was given by anyone and just allow a human moment between Deckard, Harrison Ford, and his daughter. And it's a radical act of empathy in a world that has literally bought and sold empathy through stuff like joy and pleasure model replicants. And you just look at a story like that, which is it's similar versus something like this, and it just shows that my point is that
Well,
legacy sequels and even legacy sequels where the previous
Yeah.
protagonist is sort of in a bad state can be executed not only well, but near flawlessly. I mean, there are stories to be told with these legacy
it's
characters
not.
that are worth telling, but
It's one of the most. It
the
genuinely, if I was to
whole
describe the movie
thing
in
is
one word,
that
I would
it
say
Yeah.
has to
useless.
be
Even
Like
though
it
worth
feels
telling,
like
which Dial of
it
Destiny
feels like an
outside looking
afterthought.
in
It feels
is
like
not.
I mean, essentially
So
it is. It feels like a later season of a TV show like The Flash that you can just ignore, and it doesn't change anything about your perception of the movies and the characters.
I don't want to sound like because we're gonna get into Lucasfilm and talk about some of the sequels here in a
No,
second.
not at all.
And I don't want it to sound
No.
like we are just
Is-
hating on the idea of legacy sequels or taking old characters. Right, like it can be done where you have
I,
Top Gun Maverick,
I got
Blade Runner, and
another
Mission Impossible.
example
Or you
for a
could do
legacy
it
sequel that's
Indiana
kind
Jones,
of getting
Star
a bit
Wars,
more
and
respect now.
Halloween. It's
Look at
all
Tron Legacy.
execution.
The life that they create for um I'm blanking on the name, it's been a minute, but Jeff Bridges' character, he has a horrible life after the first movie. He gets like stuck in the grid. He's like banished. He's exiled. He's like doesn't get to watch his son grow up. But the thing about that is,
Mhm.
even though they inject a lot of tragedy into his life in between the movies, it justifies itself by having a meaningful
I can
story
enjoy
told
Tron Legacy.
with him in that movie. Yeah, I'm a Tron Legacy enjoyer for sure.
I think the main, maybe not the main difference, but one of the most noticeable differences between a good legacy sequel, even if the character gets in a really shitty state, they are still recognizably that character. You could see I guess I'll just use Deckard
Unbelievable.
again. You could see Deckard
I mean, it
from
feels
how
like
he
Batman
acted
Beyond
in
is like
Blade
a perfect
Runner
example of that,
getting to
honestly.
the point he is in 2049. It's not it doesn't
Yes.
feel like it feels it's a logical progression, whereas especially I think the worst offender for me anyway is Luke Skywalker, where here is a guy who put everything, the rebellion, his life, everything on the line because he believed there was a smidgen of good in Darth fucking Vader, the most evil dude currently living who's not named Palpatine. And he puts himself in that situation because he's so full of this hope for his father, and it ends up working. And then you have in Last Jedi, I know it's a big meme, but it's true. He has I sense darkness in Ben, and even for a second, I
I mean,
unsheathe my lightsaber at
I
my
think
sleeping
modern-
nephew.
Now here's
Go to
here's
hell.
even
Luke would
here's even
not do
my
that,
thing
dude.
about
That's
that
not
writing
the
though, is
character
that like
we've
if you
seen
look at that,
and grown up with
like
in
they're
these
looking
3
at
movies.
Luke. No, I'm not gonna. But the writing for Luke is
I agree,
better than
100%.
the writing for
I
Indy.
No, this is
in the
no,
genuinely
do it,
movie.
James. This is what this
And
episode is about.
here's why. I'm gonna go quick. I'm gonna go quick play by play here. If you look at Luke, yes, that is true. He
Wow.
was fighting to bring his father back,
Wow.
but he struggled. He almost failed. He almost killed his dad and took his place. Luke struggled a lot with a darkness in him that conflicted, an intense emotion and darkness that conflicted with the hopeful message that he was trying to embody as a
Yeah,
Jedi.
he did learn his lesson.
He did, but I guess that is.
Look,
But he learned his lesson.
The thing is that
from
it's
that.
the exact same concept.
He
The
takes his
exact same
lightsaber and
concept by
he
the
literally
exact same
throws it
people.
away and
You
says,
get a
"Fuck
talented
you, dude!
director
Kill me! I'm not
who
gonna
makes
kill my
a
dad."
sequel to a beloved trilogy, and they unearth this character like 40 years later and make them this grumpy old shell of themselves. And it's the exact
The
same
thing about
It's like,
Luke, though,
Or even
is
still,
you can
here's another
definitely
point. Here's another point.
dissect if
Yeah,
that
go
is
for it.
how Luke would respond to seeing that his apprentice would probably kill everybody that he loves and succumb to darkness. That's a whole other topic. As far as what they do with Luke in the movie that we got to watch, it was this, at least to me, at least we can even talk about just intention. There is an intention to take this hopeful character, break him down through tragedy, and then at the end of his life, you get to watch him pull himself back together, come back from darkness in a way that shows the extension of the hero's journey, which Ryan Johnson talks about. How his inspiration for Luke was to say, hey, you keep going on the hero's journey, it can get very dark after the fact.
it's a great
So he wanted
concept.
to do that.
I mean,
Out of that, out of
I mean,
but the saving grace for me,
It's a good
the saving
concept, but
grace for me is that you
it's at
do
the
get that
expense of
final
his
scene.
character.
You
It
get
really
to
is.
see the
I
scene
would
where Luke
argue he
becomes
does,
he does the most Jedi thing at the end of The Last
He-
Jedi, and just about any of the other content in that franchise, where he does, he doesn't attack. He uses the Force, for defense. He doesn't attack. He doesn't strike out in violence. He is like one with the Force, and he goes out, and at least in my opinion, the most Jedi way possible. You can definitely scrutinize the journey to get to that endpoint, but they had a purpose. They had an intention to tell that story that injected a lot of tragedy. With Indy, it was just like, damn, we got to get these characters out of the way because they can't be along for the adventure. So let's just say that one died and one got miserable and left.
oh man,
I get
this is what I signed up for.
what they were going for with Luke, but it was this is what you signed up for. It was so poorly executed, in my opinion. I feel like the message that's there, I mean, what you're saying, it's true, where he has this arc. It is an arc. It's not a non-story. But they bring him so low and so antithetical to who he was, which is what Ryan Johnson wanted to do, granted. That it's too far. It becomes inconsistent with his character. Luke can fall, and he has fallen, and we've seen that. But he would not sulk in his failure for so long and abandon his sister and the rebellion or resistance or whatever to die at the hands of the problem he made. It's just, I get what they were going for. I really do, and it has great potential, but it is at such a cost to the character's legacy, where you watch the 3 original trilogy films and you see Luke go through all this, and you know in your head that the canonical endpoint is this guy spends probably the majority of his life. I mean, he's old when we finally see him, and yeah, this guy spends the majority of his life sulking alone on a hut, feeling sorry for himself and leaving everyone he cares about to die. I mean, part of Luke's darkness was that he was too attached to his family. This is so nerdy. On Dagobah, he ditches Yoda and his training. Yoda even says, if you go and do this, you will destroy everything your friends have fought and suffered for. Luke goes, nuh-uh, and he goes to Bespin anyway.
Yeah.
Luke would
I
not
think
For
the-
sure.
sit around and masturbate on an island for 50 years over one mistake. I'm sorry he wouldn't do it. Like, their intention can be whatever it was, but if you
I mean, it's
take
an
a
obsession.
characters
beloved
in your new
It's an
character
obsession with modern storytelling.
and just destroy
obsession
him
with
for the
modern
sake
storytelling,
of
taking
your
characters of like
your
the past generation or old
new
heroes and,
characters and your
bastardizing them. Because like
it's just stupid.
these. Okay, well, I'm going to. Okay, hang on.
That's a segue. Yeah.
It's just like
It's honestly, it reminds me of Evil Superman.
Welcome to the Last
Yeah.
Jedi retrospective
I'm
episode.
gonna
of Holy
take this.
Plot.
I'm gonna take this at an angle that you guys are probably gonna hate, and most people listening are gonna completely disagree with me on.
I fucking
Go
hate
for
the
it.
last.
Look at Ben
Jedi.
Affleck Batman. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's listen to me.
Yeah.
Let's listen to me. Did they
Here we
Yeah.
go.
unearth a different Batman? And like, I get
Oh
Batman's
my
character.
God.
You can make that
No,
argument,
man,
but did they
come
unearth, like, a
on,
different
man.
Batman and just like completely rob him of the
No.
character that we learned, or did they at least, if they wanted to do something exploratory, take it to the side and make it their own iteration? I understand.
But the problem with that, which we've got well, the audience doesn't know. The audience doesn't know. The problem with that, we've talked about this ad nauseum. The problem with that is that
And who cares?
DC and Warner Brothers and Zack Snyder were essentially telling an Elseworld story as their mainline DC content because it is irresponsible with the intellectual property. The majority
This
of
is true.
people who like comics, like comic characters, and know about comic characters,
No,
like
look,
general audience people,
look.
know it from movies.
I
These
think we've
people
had
are
enough-
not reading. These people are not reading The Killing Joke or watching Batman the Animated Series. Hold on. And so when you have
No,
a
that's how they
character
advertise it.
in your mainline competition with the MCU, this is the DC universe, which is how they advertise it. You can claim it was Elseworlds all you want.
Okay.
That's how they advertise it. And then you have Batman straight
I
up
would
not
disagree with
being
that.
Batman
I would disagree with that.
for like 2 movies
I think
until the very end. It's irresponsible with the character. I mean,
I don't
Batman
have
is
to
as
imagine.
big as
I
a
don't have to
character
imagine
that
this.
you
I
can
don't
get
have to
away
imagine
with
this.
it with him more than other people. But
Just gonna
imagine
get
if
him
they
out of it.
took Superman, which
No, no, no,
people
no.
argue that I guess they did
I
that.
love Zack Snyder's
But
take
no,
on
that
Superman.
was it's
Look,
not
I get what
what
you're
they
saying.
did with Superman and Man of Steel is
but you have
not
to
anywhere
understand where I'm
near
coming from, which is
Batman shooting
that it is
people's
not
heads
like
off
they're
with
not
the
reanimating the corpse
Batcopter.
of a different a different. Someone didn't take a version of Batman and cultivate them, and then another dude did not come along and put a spin on it. That did not happen. And it's like,
that's fair.
disagree with the choices or not. Trust me, there are hundreds
Okay.
to disagree with.
That's-
and
you know what?
personally, I disagree with
That's
them
true.
too.
That did not
some
happen.
of them,
I'll give you that.
as much as I love those movies. But at least they had the balls to do their own thing. These movies don't have the balls to do their own
Experiment with the
thing. Instead, they are too creatively bankrupt to invent their own characters or even reiterate them. So they unearth another person's vision and bastardize it. And it's like, do something fucking new.
Don't get me wrong, viewers. I think because I know there are a lot of passionate Snyder fans out there. I don't want to get crucified on episode 3. I think that the Snyderverse, for what it
Batman.
is, especially
Superman and
now,
Lois.
and we've talked about this between the 3 of us. I think the Snyderverse now in the current DC climate, where you have something like the Batman, which is, in my opinion, basically perfect. Yeah, and Superman and Lois as well. I'm glad it exists as an Elseworld story. I am. And I think that it's cool that we have these movies that take these characters in wildly different directions and, so on and so forth. And I do think what they end up doing, it's a lot like James was talking about with Luke Skywalker having the ultimate Jedi moment, which, there are different schools of thought even on that scene. Whatever, I won't get into that.
Yeah.
But Ben Affleck Batman, especially in Zack Snyder's Justice League, I mean, that's definitely Batman. So it's not like
talk about Superman.
Snyderverse Batman. I even think BVS is a
Yeah,
pretty good movie. It's just a Superman movie. So my main point, yeah, well, we could segue to Superman and Lois, but
I
my
mean, it's
main
in character.
point
though.
with that, to finish
No.
up this tangent that we're not even technically talking about, is for me, I think that when you take a beloved character and you put them on the most mainstream, reaches the most amount of people possible, and you fundamentally not change, because I'm not
Okay, we're gonna have to make
like
this an
averse to
episode.
changing
Okay.
characters, but Batman not shooting
This is a
people
teaser.
is
The point
the
is,
most
we
fundamental
all
thing
we
you
all
can
like
get.
it. We all
Well,
like
we're
it.
gonna
Time
have,
it for
I'll,
Rebel
I'll
Moon.
save
and I don't want
I'll
to come
save
across
my
as
main
like
thoughts. We'll have a
Snyder
Snyderverse
purist
episode.
either.
Long story
I'm about
short,
to
it's
gush about
infinitely
Superman and
better
Lois.
than
I fucking love
the
James
Disney
Gunn.
schlock.
So I think we all have like a pretty
I think we should get into it.
mediated standpoint on the Snyder stuff, which is like we enjoy it, we see it for what it is, and we also like the other stuff. But the problem is that at least it's its own thing. Indiana Jones 5, whether you like it or not, is Indiana Jones 5. Like, I am all about headcanoning, but you
Yeah.
can't deny that there are 5 Indiana Jones movies. You can't deny that Episode 9 exists. You can't deny that every single character in the original trilogy dies for Rey Skywalker. Like, you can't deny
Oh,
that.
okay. I'm ready to talk about Superman and Lois.
Point is that we are not a fan
James
of
just,
not
just got
canon.
stabbed in the gut with
like
that sentence.
Frankensteining these characters for necromancy, and hopefully if
All right.
James Mangold
Necromancy.
can,
I'm starting to
if
call it movie
hopefully James
necromancy.
Mangold likes to Frankenstein Indiana Jones, he can tell a
That's
cool
funny.
Frankenstein story with Swamp Thing.
Banger closer line. I think we can't top that. We got to move on.
Okay,
now.
Superman and Lois. Let's talk about.
What
The
a
end
what
of
a
the Nostalgia
segue.
Critic
Okay,
review.
so for context,
Yeah, I
Lois,
think
oh my
I
God,
think
my
that's a
God.
good enough bow to put on it. So
our first episode.
let's talk about something
in, like,
good
my
now.
little spiel. These guys are big Star Wars fans and Lucasfilm fans, you can tell. But they have still to this day they have like that unbelievable passion for it. That is me with Superman. And if I was to think a piece of media for
We
that,
were
it's
big Star Wars
absolutely
fans.
Superman and Lois. I've always loved Superman, but not until this show. I think this entire show is solid. I know people have issues with season 2. I know James has more issues with season 2 than I do. I know people do have issues with like the CW style of writing. And I do think people try to make the argument that this show is not a CW show, but I still think it is at its core. I think it is a drama and it is tackling like the lifestyle of characters more than like a Marvel show, which is just like superheroes. The way this show was pitched to Tyler Hoechlin was This Is Us meets Superman, which I think is a perfect way of describing it. Which This Is Us is like an Emmy award-winning show, and Superman and Lois has won awards as well. But season 3 just concluded. James, you just watched it. James, yeah. So once again, just like Tears of the Kingdom, James explain to us. Yeah. So
James, why don't you walk us through the past like
explain to us
24 hours
know
of
it
your
is.
death
what
march?
your night looked like. What your night looked like last night. So we know you saw Indiana Jones.
Yeah, this is
That one
2 in a row, isn't it?
Okay, so yeah, I wasn't
Yeah,
done
give us
with
a walkthrough.
work-related
God.
stuff until about 9. So I had been watching, some Superman and Lois of the week, but I had to get them out. I also had to go watch Indy 5. So at 9:30, I went and watched Indiana Jones 5. Almost left the theater, but didn't.
You should have.
And then basically I got back to my place. I was calling Jacob and I was like, what did I just watch? I was back in 2019 like it was Nom.
Okay, let's talk about
And-
Superman, please.
Yeah. After that I was like, all right, it's time. So I
Rise of
watched
Skywalker
the
wound
last
still
5
fresh.
episodes of Superman and Lois. And then because of our time zone differences, basically I went straight from I watched like Superman and Lois from like 2 a.m. to 8 a.m. and then for me started recording or getting the process rolling to record at like 8:30. So
You're-
we had
you're pretty
another
fresh on the
we're
season,
rolling
so I think,
right in to
yeah, so you're
recording,
rolling
so
right
we-
in. I
fresh
think we should take
takes.
this at a couple angles. I think we should talk about the season finale in a bottle, and then just talk about season 3 as a whole, and kind of give our opinions on both.
Yeah.
I am biased here, and I'm trying to keep that in line. But like for the limited time that we've been doing this, I mean, I haven't given a single thing other than Spider-Man above a 6 out of 10. Yeah, we are coming off, and I mean, don't get me wrong.
We are coming off
Don't get me wrong.
haters.
I'm a massive like skeptic and cynic when it comes to this stuff. Like
Yeah,
I
we're
hold it
kind
at
of
a high
coming off as
standard.
haters right now.
With that said, I
I'm
legitimately
kind of a
give the
hater,
finale of season
honestly.
3 a 10 out
Whatever.
of 10.
Sue me.
The way that they tied together, because my problem with these like DC shows is that they're very like seasonal. Like they only occupy
Wow.
a season of storytelling. The only real exception to that is like Arrow season 1 and 2, where like Slade is in the flashbacks, and then he comes in season 2 as Deathstroke as the main villain. There were some other like tie-ins and stuff, but nothing like this, where you introduce Bizarro in season 2 in the Doomsday suit, and you think it's a red herring. Because Liam has not watched Superman and Lois. Liam's. So for context, in season 2, it starts with a undisclosed figure in a Doomsday suit, the original suit that he
I've seen episode 1,
debuted
and I
in
thought
Death
it
of
was
Superman.
pretty good.
Yeah. So he's in. There's a guy in that suit,
Like a
and you're like,
hazmat
"Holy
suit
shit,
that
Doomsday's coming up!" And like
reveals
all
who
of
he is.
there's like earthquakes all across like small. Like Doomsday is like
Like the
punching
green
his
one
way
with
up
the
to Earth.
little goggles.
And then Clark like
That's
punches
cute.
the mask off and it's Bizarro. And it's like, oh, it's a big red herring. What Superman and Lois loves to do. Like the show starts with this character called Captain Luthor, and he turns out to be John Henry Irons. There's Morgan Edge. He turns out to be Superman's brother, which is such a fucking
And Morgan
awesome
Edge.
concept. So the season starts out, season 2, and it's Bizarro in the Doomsday suit. But it turns out it's a double red herring because Bizarro ends up becoming Doomsday. And it's like, I know people have issues
Zod
with like
style.
Zod becoming Doomsday, and I've heard some people having issues with Bizarro becoming Doomsday. But it's just done so well over 2 seasons. Where this character goes from being Superman, because I mean people have issues with season 2, but one thing I love about it is how it juxtaposes Bizarro World and our world, and it shows this Clark that has this balanced family and this Clark that has this family that's falling apart, and you learn about Bizarro before he becomes Bizarro, and he has Lois and the twins, and the Bizarro's family is falling apart, and eventually Bizarro becomes like an addict on kryptonite, because on Bizarro World kryptonite helps Superman, and he becomes Bizarro, and then he makes our way to our Earth, gets killed, and then he gets reanimated by Lex Luthor at the end of season 3 and tortured to death over and over again. Well, first he gets experimented on by Bruno Mannheim, and that gives him properties to come back from the dead, which is a Doomsday ability, which we talked about BVS earlier. They
That'll do it.
neglected that a little bit. Comes back from the dead over and over again. So Lex Luthor tortures him and makes his body basically into Doomsday.
For now.
So it's just this amazing build up to Doomsday as a character through like 5 or 6 villains being involved, which is just like a dream for a Superman fan. And if you don't know, this show is incredibly expensive. It looks great, and this episode has a 10-minute fight with Doomsday and Superman on the big screen where they take it to the moon. It's like, dude, it's just
Well, it looks great. I mean,
insane.
you can tell.
One thing I've loved about the show is that
Mhm.
it always feels like these Superman movies that never came out.
For sure.
But now you're getting to see this long form extended version of them. Even in the way as usually you see this with movies, like look at Spider-Man movies. They have some kind of like top 20 Spider-Man villain list on the wall at Sony, and like which one have we not done yet? And I used to enjoy that a lot with like comic book franchises where
Yeah,
you would just
for
keep
sure.
going down the line and getting to see these adaptations. This show has that where it's like, okay, up until now, because we're getting towards the end, we've done Lex, we've done Zod, and the prime timeline we've already gotten Brainiac like
not.
twice by now. And they kind of continue that where it's like, okay, let's keep seeing some of these villains for Superman that we haven't seen yet. And there's plenty that would be fantastic for the show. But that being said, they're getting towards their end game, and so now they're kind of delivering on that cinematic quality where it's like, now let's give people these Superman stories, like with this Superman that they care about and with this cinematic quality. Now let's do like the cinema level villains. Let's do Lex. Let's do Doomsday.
We're gonna get him in Legacy,
We're just
man.
never getting Brainiac.
He's on my
The
bingo
closest thing
card.
that we're ever gonna have to Brainiac is
He's on my
Megamorph.
bingo.
Probably, yeah. Actually, I don't know about that. I think the villain might turn out to be the
I
Authority.
think the Authority will be involved. I don't think they'll be the central antagonist.
I don't think it's Brainiac.
You know, I'm not so sure about that anymore.
I could see Brainiac being like the Justice League
I'm
with
with
Loki
James. I think it is
kind
the
of
Authority.
villain. Which I would kick down with.
I think Brainiac is going to be in that universe
him or-
for
I don't know.
sure. We're
He-
talking
him or
about the
Marvel
James
would-
Gunn verse,
He
by the
would
way.
fit the themes of Legacy from what I could tell very well. But James Gunn
Yeah,
has his ideas. I don't care. I'll let him do his thing.
I used to think he was going to be the main guy in Legacy. I do not anymore. Let me just say this about Superman and Lois, by the way.
Doomsday is a
I
monster.
just looked
in
up
this.
while we were talking.
Like, it is.
Doomsday
You should
just
just
to
like watch
see
the fight
what he looks
sequence.
like.
It's not a fight
This
sequence until
design
the end. Like
blows
Doomsday,
BVS
like,
Doomsday out of the water
ragdolls him.
like
He
3
like
times
takes,
over.
He, like,
That's
throws
crazy
him
looking.
all the way from Smallville to Metropolis. Takes him in the subway, like basically kills him.
Crazy.
That's one of the things that people talk about with Snyderverse is a lot of people say, and I'm not saying this is my opinion for the record. We'll talk about that in the Snyder
I
episode.
will say
but people
it is
say
a lot more
that
satisfying. I'm fine
Doomsday was
with them
kind of
doing Death of
unearned in
Superman
that universe,
in BVS.
where it
Honestly,
feels
I'm
like
not.
we
I know
had the
people
Superman
pre-buy it,
for a
but
movie,
it
and then
is
in
a
the
lot
next
more
movie he gets
satisfying
killed
to
by
learn
Doomsday.
to- I mean,
I don't
Tyler
know.
Hoechlin's been playing Superman for 7 years. I mean, this version of the character we've only had for 3.
That's my point,
is
though, is that
very
people
earned.
are
And
very
it's
connected and
it's
know
thematically
Tyler
thematically
Hoechlin's
relevant.
Superman,
to
so
work
that when
with.
he
You know
does
how this
fight
character
Doomsday,
feels.
it
For,
feels
a brief
more. I guess I'll
seasonal
keep using the word
theme
earned
is like
as
kind of
opposed to
one's
Snyder.
conflict with their body. So Lois gets cancer. Bizarro, we talked about earlier. Bruno Mannheim's wife. He was onomatopoeia. He was like a deep cut Green Arrow villain. I was like, dude, if you told me there was going to be a Superman show that had Green Arrow villains, I wouldn't believe you because it's like made for me. Yeah.
Well, there is
Like,
a
you
version of
have-
Oliver Queen.
She
in
has
the Superman
cancer,
Lois
and like
universe,
Bruno's like
so-
experimenting on her to try to save her, and she ends up dying.
Had
So
onomatopoeia
the whole
of all of
theme
them.
of the season is like one's conflict with their body, and it ends with Superman fighting his doppelganger, who has been turned into like an abomination, and that is just such an eloquent way to integrate Doomsday. One thing I want to bring up, which is quite possibly one of the most unique perspectives I think this podcast will have for a while, is that
It's cool. It's cool
went
stuff.
to the first. James and I went to the first convention that Superman and Lois ever had. It was Tyler Hoechlin, Elizabeth Tulloch's, and Alexander Garfin's first convention ever. But it was their first convention back from COVID. It was the first time they really publicly talked about the show, and I vividly remember, and I never thought it was going to happen. I vividly remember Tyler Hoechlin saying he got asked by the crowd what villain he'd want to fight, and he said Doomsday. And and here we are. So I have just
Here we are.
Yeah. the people that make this show.
It sounds like
fucking
he has been
love
fighting
Superman.
Here
for
we
this
are.
show to
That
stay
is
on for a
the
fourth season.
difference
Cool
between.
stuff.
And I'm so glad we're
Talk
talking
about
this in the
a
same
guy who
episode of
deserves it,
Indiana
man.
Jones.
Tyler
There's a
Hoechlin
difference
is a
between
good
these
dude.
two projects. These people love this character, and they love the version of the character that they have made, not the one that they've dug up. They love this version of the character that they have built from the ground up. And Tyler Hoechlin literally is flat out saying in public he wants a villain to fight, and the creators of the show are giving him that. Like, they are all working together to have this ship be so tightly run.
I think it's
the
a
one
good
I will
point
get
where
to Indiana
you
Jones.
sometimes, if you take something like Indiana Jones, which we touched on, you can have the right director. I feel like out of all the directors, you would think James Mangold, he's up there, but
Liam
the difference
Ryan
is
Johnson is talented.
is
and
you have,
good at
and
making
I would even
movies.
say Ryan Johnson. You
Whoa.
have these directors who are talented and very, very good at making movies. Ryan, he is. He doesn't get Star Wars, but he is a good director.
Passionate.
He's a good director. Knives Out is good. Breaking Bad, obviously amazing. My point is, you can have the right guy, but if they are not knowledgeable and passionate, yeah, passionate's the word, about the character, especially if it's legacy content. I mean, this is more timely than ever. Superman has been around for ages. And, if you take these characters, which people have grown up with, that people love and have connected to since childhood, you have to have a reverence for that and a respect for the audience. And that to me is the main difference,
Now,
where something like Superman and Lois succeeds because everyone, actors, writers, directors, are so clearly Superman fans that you end up with a better product versus someone
I'm gonna
like
play.
Ryan Johnson who makes a Star Wars movie all
I'm gonna play
about
the slightest.
how
I'm
stupid
gonna play the slightest
Star
bit of
Wars
devil's
is,
advocate for
which is it's
for the
probably a bit of a
concept of
hyperbole,
like
but you know what I mean. Is
like
so
This is a
passion
crazy
and
that's my
reverence for
take on it.
characters.
But
Because
please,
I feel
go
like
ahead.
I know it is. Now, my opinion falls somewhere in the middle as a disclaimer, but I feel like you will see some of these directors talk about how when they take on these characters, when they do one of these extensions of a franchise, they try to set some of their reverence for the characters at the door. James Gunn had that reservation where he was like, I don't really want to do a Superman movie because
Mhm.
everybody has their idea of how this action figure should be played with. So I understand from that storytime perspective that, like Ryan Johnson, for example, will be like, no, be like, let's set the reservation and the worship
but
to the side.
my
What is the best
my
thing to do for this story that I want to tell?
no,
I
my
get
point
that.
is just don't. My point is just don't touch it.
You have to strike a balance
just
because the other things.
if you're having
Yeah,
to do,
I'd say leave well enough alone.
if you're having to do mental
I think you need to
gymnastics
strike a
to figure out how to
balance
handle a
between the
character,
two.
maybe they shouldn't be fucking handled. Like, yeah, like the reason why James Gunn didn't do a Superman movie and
Yeah,
didn't
in a
do
There-
perfect
Superman
there's-
world,
when you were
is
dealing
in a
because he
perfect
didn't
world,
feel like
we
he
would
had
have
an
we wouldn't
angle
have
to
got
tell
the
the
sequel
story on.
trilogy, but
So he didn't do mental gymnastics to figure out how to find one. Now,
make new shit maybe. But you gotta. I know, like, there are a lot of
yes,
Snyder fans out there who just blanket hate James Gunn because he's the new universe. But you gotta respect the fact that James Gunn did not take up Superman until he felt like he had something to say with it. I mean, that's cool to see from like a Hollywood bigwig. Is I know that if I made a Superman movie after making Guardians of the Galaxy and Suicide Squad, which were all bangers, like, I know I could do it and I know it would make a lot of money.
no, you're not.
But I'm not
No,
going
you're
to
not.
take
I mean,
this
I followed
character,
it.
who again people
He
love and
he
grew up
turned down a
with
Superman
and
movie.
have reverence for. I'm not just going to use him
Well,
as an action
yeah.
figure. I want to have something to say. Which, outside looking in, obviously I could be getting marketed to really hard, but I don't think I am. Yeah, so I think maybe it's a trifecta. You need, at the most basic level, you need a director who is competent and makes good stuff. You need someone who, maybe not at the expense of doing something new or telling a meaningful story, has passion, maybe even if not reverence, at least passion for the character they're telling the story about. And then they need to have something to say with that character, because you can have, I can't think of an example right now, but I'm sure there are a million of them. You can have like a director who's good and
Dial of
loves
Destiny.
their
Yeah.
character,
Now let's talk
but if
about
they don't have
we can
anything
dive back
to
into
say
Superman
with
and
it,
Lois, though,
you can
because
get
this is an example
stuff like
of,
just
I think,
nostalgia,
yeah,
pandering,
a group
bullshit, whatever.
there are a group of creative there are a group of creative people who they walk that line where you can tell that sometimes they will not look to the
It's the
character's
trifecta.
previous stuff as scripture. They will do their own thing if they think it is interesting and the best thing to do for the
For sure.
story
I mean,
and this version of
this
the
show is-
character, then they'll mix
this
it
show
up.
is-
But
one of the show's like biggest objectives, and the showrunners openly talked about this, is they like to reinvent their characters. Which I mean,
which is
in the first
equally
season of the
necessary, because
show,
you can't, otherwise we'd
you
just
have
be
Morgan
telling the
Edge
same
as
stories
well.
over and over and over
Liam,
and
you know
over.
who Morgan Edge is? He's like he's a lot like a Lex Luthor type. Yeah, and I mean, yeah, he's a bargain bin Lex Luthor, and
the bargain
so
bin Lex
twisted
Luthor,
that he's like a
and other
facade
stuff.
for an original character who's Superman's brother,
Not
who's
really.
like probably still the show's best villain. It's like a unanimously loved character.
Yes.
That is how you reiterate, not retreading steps.
It's taking a character, and even we could go back all the way to episode 1 with
Morgan Edge.
Across the Spider-Verse in the Spot, where you take a character that you don't totally destroy the character, but you take a character like Bargain Bin Lex Luthor, whose name I've already forgotten, or the Spot, and you make them Morgan Edge. You take them and you make something that those
I
are the
mean,
types of
yes,
characters
but yes,
that you
yes.
can
See, I'm
take
like-
and change even radically
then-
to
and
fit
then
your story and your
Morgan
characters.
Edge and Tal Rho
but
become the
doing that-
Eradicator.
Yeah.
which is like
go back
a
to like Batman.
deep
Doing that with
cut,
Batman is
a
totally
deep
different.
cut to the
So,
death of Superman.
It's all about
Gone.
in all of this. It's all about striking a
Super
balance.
cool.
For the record, what we're talking about, taking these obscure characters and making them something new and exciting and something that connects with audiences. That sounds
Yeah.
exactly like James
Evolutionary
Gunn's
did.
whole shtick on Look at the Guardians. Who the hell gave a
Uh,
shit about Rocket Raccoon before? I mean, I'm sure there were people who read
Well,
the
yeah, you
comics,
kinda-
but like
You're
Groot was not
stealing
a
the words out of my
household
mouth.
name until
You're stealing the
James
words out of my
Gunn
mouth, like-
got a hold of him. And this is the guy who's doing Superman.
Well,
So
Ditto.
he
Superman
doesn't want to
and
do
Lois season
a
1
big
is all
Brainiac
what?
guy,
Okay.
and he wants to take
Now,
I don't know,
by the way,
Dick
for the
Urkel
record,
from Action Comics.
let's say for the record,
Yeah,
for the pod,
yeah,
just in
if he
case
wants
this
to
is
take
right,
Love Shido,
my
let's do
theory,
it, 'cause
especially because they've cast a
I
young
think that
Superman, is
he
that
could do
James
it.
Gunn is going to want to tell an underdog story. He's already said that this is going
Uh-huh.
to be a world where there's already superheroes, and I think that this is going to be a movie. I think there's going to be a movie about Clark's journey into a world where there's already heroes, and he is going to have this
Mhm.
come of age story where he learns who Superman is.
That's pretty cool.
Because he gains his conviction from seeing heroes who don't have the same values that he does.
I mean, it makes sense in universe too.
Well,
Like,
I mean,
you look at a character like Wonder
this show
Woman,
does
who's
that.
been around
Superman and Lois
for
does that in the
ages.
first season.
So
Evil
that's
Superman is
I
in
can
the
get
first
down with
season, and the show directly critiques it. And like John Henry Irons comes from. Liam, do you know who John Henry Irons
Mhm.
is? Steel. No, yeah. So he's not Lex. He's John Henry Irons. He comes from a world where Evil Superman killed his wife. He was Lois Lane, and he is basically a direct critique.
Yeah, he
on
is.
Evil
Is he not Lex
Superman
in this?
and the perception that Evil Superman has done to the character. Where John Henry Irons is like, it is impossible for Superman to be good. Superman is always bad.
Mm.
Like I don't trust it, and he learns to be like basically best buddies with Clark throughout the show. It's just so well made, man. I can gawk about this
The
for
show-
hours.
Yeah.
I can gawk about this for hours.
You forget that they're enemies.
Okay,
You
let's
forget that-
get back. Let's get
you
back
forget that
to
they were
season
enemies.
3. James,
And
But no, I think
what would you
it's
give?
it's sort of
Yes, let's get back to
it's
season
cool.
3.
It's really cool.
So,
yeah.
what would you give?
We've been
season
talking
3
about
out
it
of
for
10, the
36
entire
minutes.
season?
What would I give it?
Yeah, let's
I would
let's
give
dial in so we
season
can get to some
3.
news.
I am currently sitting at a 9, and that is basically of no fault to the third season. It's just because I have season 1 to compare to, and I think
Yeah.
season 1 does like
go
one or
ahead,
two
man.
things a little bit better,
By
which
the
I
way,
can talk about right
dude,
now.
I'm
if
on the
you want
exact
me,
same
if
page.
you
I
want me
give
to
it
just
a
get
9
into it and just get the. So I think
The finale is a 10, 100%.
Yeah,
there's
go for
one
it.
thing about season 1 that I don't quite think season 3 has, even though
thought
it
you just
has
said it was a 10
basically
out of
this
10.
broken up into 2 pieces. Morgan Edge
Okay, whole
is
season's
a
9, finale 10.
consistent,
Got it.
or Tal Rho, whatever you want to call him, even when he takes the form of the Eradicator, he's kind of this consistent threat that pushes the characters
Liam was
and
talking about-
obviously the main character Clark.
Liam was talking about
to the
earlier
limit
how he
for the
thinks like
whole
James
run.
Gunn is going to pull
So
out.
you have that
Bullshit out.
tension carried
like,
through.
Season 1 is very, from what I can tell, Superman Legacy is going to be very similar. It's all about Clark confronting his heritage, and Tal Rho is the face of that. So yeah, it doesn't really matter who they use.
But I think season 3,
Dude, I've been talking about Doomsday.
we're talking about spoilers at this point. Basically, there's Bruno
Yeah, and
Mannheim.
I
who's
do
the
have-
villain for basically what
I trust
10
James
episodes,
Gunn with it. I
first
really
10
do.
episodes or 11.
Dude, he's awesome.
We've been
man.
on spoilers.
He's
Well,
such a-
Bruno Mannheim is fantastic. He's great. He's kind of comes across like this Lex Luthor who
He's-
didn't get
he's a Lex
the silver
Luthor
spoon
who
that Lex
didn't get the
was
silver
born into. Now
spoon
Lex,
and
you know his backstory has like
has a more emotional outlook on the world instead of an intellectual one.
and a more like a morally gray
No, this
kind of
is
like he has
this is
deep
by far the
convictions,
best
but
Bruno
he just
Mannheim's
takes
ever
them to
been,
extreme
which is
measures.
such a crazy
But-
thing. Honestly. I mean, he's like a
But Bruno,
he's a lot like
oh yeah,
he's
for
like
sure.
a hammerhead.
Bruno Mannheim's
He's
just like,
He's just like a goon. He just runs Intergang. But in this,
Yeah, he's like a goon.
deeply rooted character. It's really cool.
Now the thing about
Seems like this is sort of a peak for a lot of characters.
Bruno though in this is that he's very central. He really anchors the emotional, like the soul to the season. And then for the last couple episodes, he really just kind of is out of it. Now I don't mind that because they very much established that
Yeah, so
to take down
I do have a
Bruno
perspective on that.
could mean
Honestly.
unleashing Lex.
Um,
But I think I
do
would have
think
liked. Yeah.
somewhere
Yeah.
along the lines of this production, it seems like to me, and this could be a crazy assumption, that the writing was on the wall that they were either going to have to end or coming to their end. So they wanted to conclude the Bruno story and start the story that would conclude the season, not the season, the series, honestly, with introducing Lex at the end there. And I do think they tied it in nicely. I can understand where like that could cause a bit of a disconnect, but I honestly think it's because they wanted to pull out their big guns because they were worried about getting canceled. Like in a world where Superman and Lois is living in the CW
I think
of
all I
old, which if
really
you don't
would
know,
have
the
want.
CW was acquired by a company last year called Nexstar. Pretty sure I got it right. Which they have no interest in narrative television. They are like they're basically just like a cable conglomerate. The CW is being turned into a network of like reruns and sports, reality TV. It's not gonna be the CW anymore.
Reality
The CW is
TV, I
dead.
think.
For better or for worse. I mean, the CW is a garbage network in my opinion. That have turned out
CW's
some
gone.
shows that I think are
It's
endearing
over.
and have heart. And when you find that the CW have these corners of it with these really passionate people that seem to love comic book fans and the limited budgets they'll give them, and they'll make something that's honestly pretty good. Or oftentimes pretty awful. Superman and Lois is quite possibly the most ambitious show they've ever made, and it's been really weird for them to be making it at this business transition they're going through, which we're going to talk about later a little bit. So I do think, James, that is a byproduct of that, is that in a reality where the CW was not going through that transition, this show, as much as I hate to say, it would probably have like 6 or 7 seasons, and Bruno Mannheim would be the season 3 threat, and the next season we'd get another esoteric Superman villain. But they're definitely having to condense their story, which honestly I do think there's an argument to be made that is helping their narrative. Yeah, for sure.
I think it is. After. Now I think all I was really looking
I see what you're
for
saying.
was like the jail cell conversation, like how they did with Tauro in season 2. I would have liked to have Clark been like, I think Lex is loose. What can you tell me about him? And Bruno kind of passed the torch with a conversation about Lex.
Valid,
I think that's all I was looking
like
for cohesion reasons. That's really
we do not get told who Lex is. We are strictly shown through and through. Like the 11th episode, no, the 12th, the penultimate episode is like a flashback episode basically about Lex Luthor in prison and how he goes from being like the Lex Luthor we know to like this hardened prison conditioned version of the character, and I think that's maybe from my perspective a little bit more compelling than being told who he is. I don't know.
It's nice to see a Lex who has gotten past the let me
far
put on
down
the
the
suit
line
and pretend to be a Samaritan period of the character. This is the Lex. This is the Lex who would go start the Injustice League, not even the Legion of Doom.
No, this
is the Lex Luthor who would grab like Cheetah and the
with
Joker and
Jesse
just go for the
Eisenberg's Lex
throat
Luthor,
of
this one's
Superman.
made
Like
for you. He is on the if they were on the opposite end of the spectrum, like this guy is complete. He's on the opposite end of the spectrum from Eisenberg's take on the character.
Yeah. This is a Lex Luthor that he's just past the point. This is usually what happens. Like you get a storyline where basically as soon as Superman throws Luthor in jail, he just gives up, at least for a time. He gives up for a window on even trying to perform for the public. He's like, I am a villain now. I'm going to take this guy out. Now, another great thing about Luthor, though, is that he'll get to that point, and then he will actually manage to weasel his way back into public good graces somehow. Like when he becomes president. And it's like, you just tried to blow up the moon 2 months ago, and now you're running.
Well,
It's like, and now you're running for mayor, and he's like, I've changed.
Well, I love this Lex because he
Usually
is
because
not
he's
in it
helped
for the
save the
vanity.
world with the Justice League, and
He
then he'll run
gets
with
out of
that.
jail,
He's
doesn't
done
tell
his
the
Gru
public
arc.
at all, so that he can
No,
blindside Lois and Clark. He's in jail in Smallville, which I do think is kind of a plot convenience, but whatever. He's in jail in Smallville, and he walks an entire day nonstop to get to the Kent farm, and just like unleashes on them and tells them like, he basically tells Lois Lane, retire or I'm killing everyone you love. And then in the next episode, he kidnaps her dad, doomsday after her husband. Like, he's so relentless. He is calculated, but he doesn't take the time to be. And that
He's in
shows
it.
how smart he is. He is a, this is the most hater Lex Luthor we've gotten, which is
he's
awesome.
a hater. He's just a hater. And I'm not gonna lie, what I do like about it is it's
Yeah,
almost
he
like
is-
Lex Luthor said, I'm not waiting for episode 5 of the next season. I'm free now. It's like if Damien Dark in the last
Yeah.
episode of Arrow season 3 just showed up and started just absolutely
I mean, it's Lex
unraveling the
Luthor. He
season.
needs.
So I kind of
he
like
needs to
that.
be
That
that
it's like
way.
the second Lex
Yeah, he needs to
Luthor
be
gets
that
out
way.
of jail,
Um,
pacing be damned. He's going for it.
well, I mean,
Yeah.
the show just has better pacing too.
Yeah, because he can't be like the Thinker in the Flash, where it's like I'm thinking for like an entire season. Yeah,
No, that's literally the
um,
Thinker's entire character. He's just like, I
Yeah.
am the most intelligent man on the planet.
all
I
he
must
says.
further think through my plan. Yeah.
That's a good line. I can't be like the Thinker who's like, I'm thinking.
Now, I'll kind of wrap up some of my like
That's really
specific
funny.
thoughts of Superman and Lois before we get into conclusions. I'll say this. So I love Alexander
Hold on, I
Garfin.
must
I love his
think about
performance as
this.
Jordan. To me, through Alexander Garfin's performance as Jordan and through Jordan as a character, I am getting the stories about Superman's son that I have not gotten in the comics with John Kent, the comics John Kent forever. And in fact, this show just entirely shows that DC
man.
has made a massive
Dude.
mistake with how they've handled Superman's son in the comics.
We
That's
should,
a topic for another day.
We should
Don't
definitely
even
like
get me started.
start following some comics that are coming out and cover them.
We should. Oh yeah.
Oh, dude. Oh.
We should.
You want to hear us
can
talk about Paul and Spider-Man?
comics in a dedicated episode.
But I do think that Jordan's writing, writing took a little bit.
If that's something
of
you guys would like to see,
it was improving because in season 2 he was kind of dealing with some of this recklessness and emotional short-sightedness, but he seemed like he was growing out of it at the end of the second season and for the first half of the third, and then he has this turn where he's like, I'm gonna use my powers in public, like I want to be praised, and
Yeah,
I was like,
Jordan,
okay, this feels
Jordan
like
was one of my
what he would have done when he first got his powers in season 1.
And I love Alexander Garfin. I've had like a 10-minute conversation with the dude. Super cool. He fucking loves playing this character, man.
Yeah, we
Um,
met him at the con. No, it was so great to see his passion because it really just felt like this is somebody
Yeah.
who loves Superman, who
I mean, he
got
loves it.
the golden ticket to the chocolate factory to go
He's
be in a
perfectly
Superman
cast
story.
for his role.
And he was
and you could tell he puts a lot
wonderful
of
to
time
talk
and
to.
effort
So
into portraying the issues that you
yes,
want to tackle with Jordan, as far as like mental health and I mean, it is a cool concept for a drama show like this to tackle. What if a hormonal teenager with mental health issues had the powers of Superman? That is cool. Yeah. And honestly, I do think I
Brightburn.
honestly thought
Yeah.
his writing depreciated more in the middle. I actually liked his writing at the end, where he, like any other teenager, you
Without
have to,
just
you
making
have
him
to,
evil, Brightburn
and I do
style.
think I have more of a tolerance for the stuff that
Yeah.
you do, and probably most audience members, honestly, because he is a teenager. And if I had Superman powers as a teenager, would I go out in public and like smile for the camera? Probably not. But would I be reckless? Absolutely. Like his dad, and one thing I love about the show is that Superman is not perfect. Like this show is obsessed with portraying Superman as a human, which is needed, which I think.
But he's still good, which is important.
Yeah, Snyder's Superman he's a tragedy. He's okay. That's just we can't.
Well, it's what going back to Snyder. It's what he tried to do, but I feel like he did a better job than people give him credit for.
Yeah, so
But
he
this Superman,
This is a show that shows
this
just how
Superman,
much
from my
that Clark
limited
Kent can be
perspective,
like Peter
seems like
Parker.
yeah, he
they
has
where
are
issues. He's
he can
making
do all
not
these
a
him
perfect dad.
fantastic things,
He's not a
human
perfect dad.
but he still has
while
very
keeping
human
him
problems.
good,
He still struggles to make
which
the time.
is
He still struggles
ideal.
to pick up on cues or, handle a situation the right way or be around.
Well, it goes back to the classic Superman saying of comparing him to someone like Batman. Bruce Wayne is the mask of Batman, but Superman is Clark Kent. I think that's another thing that the movies sort of
Yeah, for
missed.
sure. Oh, don't get me started on fucking Kill
Yeah,
Bill
and
2,
so
dude. Don't get me
I
started.
think Superman and Lois does a very good job of showcasing that Clark Kent is not just some act Superman puts on, like Kill Bill style. It's Superman is Clark Kent. He's a human. He messes up. He makes mistakes. But what makes him such a compelling character, which for years is like people bring up the
Yeah.
Superman is boring angle because he's so good. Superman is interesting because he is the most powerful superhero on the planet, and every
Mhm.
single day he wakes up and chooses to be good regardless. It would be so that's why it's so easy to write evil Superman, and why evil Superman is boring now is
Go
because
listen to
if someone is given godlike powers and they can fly and are indestructible and shoot lasers, of course they'd be evil. I'd probably be evil. I'd probably try to take over a city Green
wrong.
Goblin style, but Superman remains good. It's I think
he's as good
Lex
as he he's as
Luthor
good as he ever can be in any
Lex
moment.
Luthor in BVS,
Yeah.
he brings up the if you are all powerful, you can't be all
Well, I mean,
good
I love
angle, and he's not all
like
good
the
because he's
positions
human, but he
that
is
Superman having
still
kids puts him in. 'Cause
Superman
it's
is
like,
good. Like if
Superman
Superman,
can punch Doomsday to Earth, but he can't figure out a way
that's
to talk to his
exactly
son.
yeah, that's it.
That's
Without
relatable.
being because if he
Like,
was totally
that's-
perfect, it would be a bit boring, but he's not.
That
And
makes
that's
me
why
understand Superman
why it's
on
so
a
impressive.
personal level.
That is.
And
Now I hate to cut off the Superman gushing, but we are reaching an hour of
Okay.
Superman and Lois conversation. So, lightning round thoughts in the interest of getting to news.
Yeah. Lightning round thoughts for me to wrap it up. Tyler Hoechlin has cemented himself as one of the greatest Superman adaptations. Up there
no,
with,
I can 100% say with 100% confidence he's the best Superman.
for me, it's between him and the DCAU Superman, with Henry Cavill being one of my favorite performers for the role.
I mean,
Tyler Hoechlin continues to bring it. He's fantastic. Lois is just battle.
she's the best Lois. It's not even close.
She's the best Lois. Her battle with cancer was something I didn't see coming for the show. It's fantastic, very well written, very much deals with what we're talking about, where one of Superman's greatest weaknesses should be human problems that he can't punch through. And so they really bring that home with him feeling, they had the line in there, feeling powerless to stop something like cancer, just like he's powerless to stop his dad from
Yeah, he
having a
can
heart
punch
attack.
Doomsday to the moon, but he can't cure cancer.
Multiple
I
times.
was waiting for it because it's the reason why the heart attack for his dad is better than the tornado scene in Man of Steel, because yeah. But I know we're gonna.
Well,
But
Superman can't stop the heart attack. He can stop the tornado.
but that's what I'm saying.
No, son, let this telephone pole rip through my abdomen.
I was waiting.
No, that
I was
that
waiting
People
for
would
that.
be scared if you
I
came
was
and saved
waiting
me.
for that line where he says like, "I'm powerless. I feel powerless." We got it.
Yeah,
New
that's
actor
like
for John.
that's another fundamental
Jonathan.
It's
goof
great.
in the Snyderverse.
Great recasting.
The biggest
Recasting is such a slippery slope.
The biggest thing I
And
want to
they did
say,
well.
because I've already talked about Bruno Mannheim. I love to see a villain elevated who's maybe a little bit less prominent. My final thing to say is that my biggest complaint with season 2 was that all of the interconnected pieces, they didn't feel interconnected. There wasn't cohesion. The show felt like it was buckling between juggling its plots in a very CW way. This season got back to feeling like season 1, where at least most of the elements clicked together and felt like one flowing river for the whole season. I was beyond happy.
I know people hated the Cushing stuff in season 2, but I didn't mind it at all here because 1, it was toned down, and 2, it was super connected to the characters.
It got a lot of the supporting cast more interconnected. So I still think season 1 just has that initial like lightning in a bottle heart of the first time you see this show and the move to Smallville and the initial struggles of the family and getting to know them. And them cementing these bonds as a more bonded family. So for that reason, season 1, 10 out of 10, a little bit better. But season 3 is like one of those rebound third seasons, like Korra season 3.
Yeah, it reminds me of Korra.
Korra
a
season
lot.
3, exactly.
And I do want to mention that I don't think the show is desperately in need of a rebound. Season 2 is still a
Still
good season of TV. I would
But
recommend
the
it.
cracks were getting wider
Um,
in a very CW way.
The cracks were getting wider, and I mean, this season, dude, with the bizarre stuff, really contextualized some decisions that left us a little confused with season 2 for sure.
That's all I gotta say
Um,
though. If you are a Superman fan,
You have to
maybe
watch
open your
this.
heart up.
It's not debatable.
Open your heart up to a little bit of small town family drama that does circle back into strengthening the super characters that you care about. This is a fantastic show, and it should just about be homework for fixing the Superman problem with adaptations. That's it.
And thank God, I mean, I talked about Snyder earlier, but thank God for James Gunn, because I mean, as far as I can read the situation, he basically saved the show. When he had his big DC journalist thing, where he got a bunch of journalists in a room and talked about his plans. He got asked about Superman and Lois, and he's like, "We're gonna keep it on the air because people like it," and that's exactly what you should be doing. Because I can tell you right now that there are a lot of people out there that are way bigger fans of this character because of the show, and I'm certainly one of them. Yeah, and I mean, I do think we should lightly touch on what has happened to the show. Um, Briefly. If you don't know, we just kind of alluded to it. The show was on the vine. Season 2 got renewed the day after the premiere. Season 3 got renewed like 2 weeks into season 2. But season 3 basically got renewed a couple weeks ago.
Season 4.
And it seems like, season 4. And it seems like it has come at a pretty high cost. The budget is going to be cut. But I am curious what that means. What we know so far is that the episode count is at 10, which I don't mind. This show is incredibly well paced. It never misses a beat. I don't mind less episodes. I just want quality episodes. And the supporting cast is basically being gutted. We are only keeping 5 members of this cast as regulars, and that's important as regulars. The 4 main family members and Lex is being upped to a regular. So Lex is going to be seemingly the big bad of next season, which is awesome. Thank God. We need good Lex Luthor on screen. But James, we've been watching the show for 3 years now. How do we feel like it's gonna float when Lana, Kyle, Sarah, John Henry, Natalie, and oh my God, what's the dad's name? How am I forgetting
Kyle?
this? I love. No, Lois's dad.
Oh, Sam.
I love Sam. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, all these characters are gone. Now we know some information about what's going to happen to them. They are being offered recurring guest roles, which means they're going to be in 3 episodes of the season. Which is not a lot, but they're working with what they got. We know for sure that Sam is not coming back.
What?
Yes, Sam is not coming back, which given the end of the season is incredibly interesting because Sam gets kidnapped at the end of the
Oh,
season.
man.
And Lex kidnaps him, and Clark is like, "Where is Sam?" And he's like, "Don't care. I told Lois not to fuck with me."
Wow.
So I could very well see them leaning into this ruthless Lex Luthor and having Sam just get completely shanked. Because, I mean, Lex killed, the moment he got out of prison, he killed the judge that saw his trial. So I could very well see Sam completely being killed off, which I think would be a little clunky. But, I mean, once again, they are reviving the show at a cost.
That's sad because I was literally just about to say the 2 characters that I feel like are necessary to come back at least once are John Henry Irons and Sam. That's very disheartening. But I would say that you can't. I would say
They
you
gotta
gotta
do what
use
they
that
gotta
for
do,
good, and you gotta use that. I hope they get something with Sam's actor.
So
Something.
I think Lana is probably not going to come back, honestly. Which is concerning because Lana is one of the better characters in the show, in my opinion. I know that's a little controversial. She's played by a pretty high caliber actress. I'm forgetting her name, but she is never going to struggle to get booked for anything. So I could very well see her not being able to meet the negotiations that the producers of the show ultimately kind of pinned up on the wall against. We know that Kyle is coming back, which I think Kyle got probably some of the best development in the season. he actually like felt like a really integral character to the theme of the story.
Yes. Agreed.
Sarah is coming back, which she also I think got a lot
Right.
of development. I know people hated those two characters in season 2, but honestly, I basically enjoy every character on the show. So here we get, I like. We have no idea on anyone else. It seems.
I
The
hope they get
actor
something with Sam.
for uh, John Henry Irons said that he's looking for work, which is not a good sign.
No.
He's probably the character that I would want to say the most, honestly, because he is just the most integral to the story. He's usually the best supporting character, in my opinion. But everyone else looks like they're dead. So
they're gonna have to time jump it, dude. They're gonna have to like time
well,
jump.
what I think they're gonna do is they're gonna move the show to Metropolis so it can explain why they're not bumping into these characters in Smallville, and it's gonna be Lex and the family in Metropolis to conclude the show.
But I think that they may even have to do something where like, I mean, immediately what it comes across to me, if these actors do not even show up for like a little bit cameo, you almost got to do something like there's been a time jump, there's been 6 months, somebody died, and so the whole
Well,
super family is
Doomsday's
just
around.
like just or just like the whole super family is just staying away because their proximity to the rest of the supporting cast got somebody killed. I think they almost need that.
So then to finish up Superman and Lois, I think you guys are both sitting comfortably at a 9. Just blanket statement. Even I'm sure people in the audience are not 100% Superman fans. So would you recommend this show just to anyone?
Yes, 100%.
Yes.
I
feel like
was not
it's
the biggest.
always-
I was not like a Superman like worshiper until I watched the show. Like genuinely, like whoever audience member out there is not a big Superman fan, I was you, dude. Go watch the shit. It's perfect. It's once again we talked about there's some stuff to get over, but it's pretty good. Tyler Hoechlin is the best version of the character. So is Elizabeth Tulloch. She's easily the best Lois Lane. I certainly would recommend watching season 1. Season 2 has some COVID production issues, but if you can get to season 3, I also think it's stellar. And season 4 looks like it's going to be good, despite what we mentioned. I have no idea how they're going to do Doomsday on a limited budget, but we'll see. But
We'll see.
it's going to be good. I cannot recommend it enough. It's out of all the stuff that we've talked about on this podcast so far, it's definitely the thing I enjoy the most. And I've been very skeptical on here. I mean, all I've been giving out are 4s and 5s and 6s, but this is a 9 to 10 out of 10 show for me. I love it.
Well, there you go. Ringing endorsement from Holy Plot. A coveted ringing endorsement.
Full 9 out of 10.
James, unless you have anything to add, I think we can get to some news.
Nope, 9 out of 10. It is the perfect blend of all the different interpretations of Superman that we've
Yeah,
seen.
and that's something too, is that like Snyder fans like to dunk on this show, but like this show is incredibly inspired by every iteration of the character. So if you have at any point stumbled across a version of Superman that you've liked, you're gonna find something in this version that you like about it. Like there are direct allusions to moments in the Snyder movies in the show.
Yeah,
there are
sure.
direct elements from the characters that are taken and adapted into the show. So please,
There's room for everybody.
Yeah, like the Doomsday they adapted is reminiscent of the Snyder Doomsday. He looks similar, even though his design is better, and his origins are similar. So just give it a chance. I'm begging you, please.
All right. So
All right.
we got a lightning round
Well,
of news here.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do news lightning round. We have obviously with the show that is so just beloved, we got a lot to say about it. But to get into some
So,
news
I think
before
we
we
can-
go, still talking
Yeah, so I think we
Superman.
can
I think that's
transition pretty easily here.
a good transition.
So the biggest news this week.
Yeah, lead us.
The biggest news this week was that James Gunn casted his Superman and Lois. He casted David Cornsweet, I believe I got that right, and Rachel Brosnan. She's in Marvelous Miss Maisel, and he was in Pearl, I believe. They're going to be the leads. That is basically all we know. They look the part, probably, honestly, more than anyone has ever looked the part for these two characters. Honestly, like, I was trying to follow the casting, because one thing about this movie is that they're literally letting us know everything about it. From, like, when they're doing what. That's one thing about Gunn is he likes to keep his fans in the know. And from the batch of people he had, these were the two I wanted.
out of all of the actors. So I kind of won.
Yep, same.
I don't know what I'm doing, but I got good karma for Superman, I guess. Because these are the actors that I wanted them to do, and these are the actors we got.
And James Gunn
And
is
James
directing,
Gunn
which
is
we
directing.
talked about.
So
We think that's a
Um,
very, very good thing.
all I have
Very
to-
excited
Yeah,
for
for
Superman
sure.
Legacy.
All I have to say on the casting is, that man looks like a Dragon Ball fusion of Henry Cavill, Tyler Hoechlin, and Tom Welling.
and yeah, there's a little Christopher
Um,
Reeve in there too. I mean, he just
So
looks like
he
Superman.
looks like-
I mean,
It
Yeah.
looks like they woke him up out of a lab, and it's like the next Superman is ready to be.
yeah, I mean, people have been
deployed.
talking about
he-
him playing
he-
Superman forever. I mean,
He looks perfect. I'm excited.
Especially for a young Superman.
I'm so glad they did like dedicated chemistry tests. I mean, of course they were going to. I'm just glad that was so
Yes,
focal in these early announcements.
Superman stories are we just gushed about Superman and Lois. Superman stories are their best when they are co-led. And like that is usually something that I think like these superhero stories can trip over is, balancing superhero and the romantic interest, but Superman and Lois are inseparable. And
When you see
Yeah.
Lois Lane basically being a superhuman in character without any powers, it can show you the very human sides
yeah,
to Clark.
for sure.
They just bring out the best in each
I mean, they're
other's
my
characters.
They
for sure.
They're my
complement each other very
favorite.
well.
The fact that they have good
they're
chemistry
my
is huge.
favorite.
That's all I got on
romance
that
in
though.
Anything, and they need to nail that on the big screen because I like Snyder's take, but Amy Adams is not my favorite Lois Lane by any means. All right.
We'll see what happens.
We'll see.
So I think I'll take us into just some true lightning round video game stuff that there's not a ton to talk about on it because a lot of it we just don't know a lot, and then a lot of it's pretty self-explanatory. I'll start off with something I hesitate to say funny because you never want to see people fail. But
No, it's
if
funny.
you have been
It's funny.
on YouTube, it's pretty funny. If you have been on YouTube at all and follow any gaming channels or content, you have no doubt heard about Lord of the Rings Gollum, a
Oh.
complete dumpster fire. Probably it's like the ET Atari game of our generation. I mean,
It's
it is
awful.
bad, and we've
If you
touched
wanna
on
watch,
it.
If you want to watch
We
a
touched on it a
funny
bit
ass
last
video on it,
episode.
go watch Angry Joe's review. It's hysterical.
If we touched on it a little bit last episode where there have been some stinky games coming out, but Lord of the Rings Gollum has been so stinky that the developers, and I think I'm pronouncing this right, Daedalic, I don't know, Entertainment, they are actually exiting game development and are
Ooh.
only going to focus on game publishing now.
They've
Wow.
laid
So
off.
there have been layoffs. That's not funny. You never want to hear about layoffs. And they have also canceled their other Lord of the Rings themed projects. So
They're
Daedalic,
dead.
basically, to put a little
Wow.
pin on it, they got bullied out of making video games because Lord of the Rings Gollum was so bad. And I am a huge Lord of the Rings fan, and Gollum is my favorite character in Lord of the
Yeah, the game
Rings.
for
So
you.
it
I
should
I
have
don't
been
know.
a slam dunk.
I thought the game
and
was always
it
going to
was
be
not.
bad. I didn't think it was going to be like literally a 1 out of 10 game. Like, I genuinely think that game is probably a 1 out of 10 from what I've seen.
I will not be playing it, but that's that. To go on with some more gaming news, there are rumors. Now, this is not confirmed, but there's heavy speculation that we are going to be seeing both a Black Flag remake, Assassin's Creed 4, and Red Dead 1 remake, which I would love both of those, especially Red Dead 1. But I mean, that's all we
there
really
were some
have to
actually
say about
pretty
these.
cool
They
details,
are
about them. So for Red Dead,
Let's
the
hear it.
reason why people are kind of, speculating on that, and I don't want to do rumor mill really on like a news roundup, but there is some pretty tangible information to back it up. The game got re-rated, which you only re-rate a game when you're going to re-release it. Rockstar recently did that with the original GTA games, and that's how people found out theirs were going to get remade, despite how awful that remake was. There was rumors of a Red Dead remake about a year ago and a GTA 4 remake about a year ago, but apparently the projects got canned to develop GTA 6, which is like been in this it's like this monumentous task to develop this game. So I'm a little skeptical on it, honestly, but it is interesting that the game got re-rated with modern definitions. I think it's a possibility. It's a
It
possibility.
looks good. I
It does
think
not look as good as Black Flag though. So
Yeah, I can take the baton on that
Okay, go
one a
ahead.
little bit. personally, this is probably a bit of a hot take. I would have rather seen a remake of
Oof.
the original, 2, or even.
No,
Well,
buddy.
there's a reason I say that. Black Flag was already pretty great, but 1 and 2 have just aged so much that I would love to see modern game design brought to them. And I actually will say that I think AC3 has the most untapped potential of any game in the franchise, except for.
But that would have to be
So
more.
here's
They would have to
why
really
they're
go
doing
in and
Black
change
Flag.
stuff because that game's
Here's why they're
problem
doing
isn't
Black
aging.
Flag, in my opinion.
I think
It's the
Well, it's
most
the most
popular,
popular for sure.
and there's
First
a
of
game
all.
called Skull and Bones. If you don't know what Skull and Bones is, it has been this basically after the sensation that was Black Flag. Ubisoft since then, and that game came out a decade ago, has been trying to make an online live service pirate game, and the game has gotten kicked down the road probably upwards of 5 or 6 times. It has been delayed ad nauseum. The press for this game is awful. They know this game is going to be a disaster. Honestly, at least financially, it might be a good game. Who knows? I certainly want to play it on here and talk about it. But I honestly think that they're trying to reuse the assets from that game and get the most out of the time they've spent on it. So it makes sense for them to take these assets and these ships and all this stuff that they've been building for this new pirate game and use it to remake a beloved one. That's my opinion.
The one that started their process
I
of
think
making
we'll
this new
see.
game.
That
in
is
the
why
first place.
Hey,
it's going to happen.
speaking of possible disasters, let's talk a little bit about Starfield.
Yeah, so
confirmed physical version.
It was
Sure,
up in the
I
air
guess, yeah.
this week.
I mean, I don't mind.
People thought the game wasn't going to get physical media.
I mean, it was gonna.
Honestly,
I would have been very surprised.
Give
if
it
it
10
didn't.
years, there's not going to be discs.
Yeah, I'm not going to be up in arms because people don't consume physical media enough, at least for me to be all up in arms. Like, I like physical media for the things I really care about as an exception. But a lot of stuff is
Yeah, I
digital
mean,
now. Now, there's totally
I'm not a
issues.
digital fan, really, honestly.
I mean,
It doesn't really matter to me.
like I said,
I'm part of the
I'm
problem.
usually on a streaming service, or if it's something that I just really care about and
We're living
did
in the end
buy.
times.
I like physical media though for something like Starfield.
I like physical
I
stuff for
would rather have
Nintendo.
a physical
say that
game
much.
than going on the fucking Game Pass, which is a good deal, don't get me wrong. And, like, generating it off the cloud. It's just so... I don't know. Maybe I'm just like... Yeah, I'm just, like, in, like,
Just
a bygone
old-fashioned
era,
a
but
little
it's just,
bit.
like... It's so much more endearing to, like, go to the store and pick out a game.
I know what that's
And,
like.
get it in your hands and they'll just, like, download it off the cloud. Not even streaming off the cloud. I mean, innovation is necessary. I get it. But I don't think, like, discs should, like, go away or anything. But I definitely
No, I know.
I don't think they'll. I don't know if they'll fully go. I mean, maybe
for
way down the
non-AAA
line, but
releases like Starfield, I think they will. It's why I was so concerned that a game like Starfield was on the you know death row for physical release. It's like if a game like Starfield isn't getting physical media, I mean, why the fuck is like Hades
Everything else
2
is
gonna get
screwed.
like a physical release or like Silksong, you know?
well, the good news, it is. So to move on into more of the Nintendo side of things, there have been conversations with
Bobby
Bobby
Kotick is
Kotick,
the
I believe
CEO
it's
of
pronounced.
Activision.
And there have been conversations he's had with Nintendo that the Switch's successor is going to be the closest like power level we have to compare it to would be PlayStation 4, Xbox One
about
level
that.
stuff, but mainly PS4 is what they were talking about, which is good. I don't think anyone was really expecting Nintendo to drop a PS5 equivalent. I don't think they really need to. If they can get something like
Yeah.
Tears of the Kingdom
On
running
phone.
appropriately on the Switch, I don't think they need to have something that can successfully run Starfield. I don't know if
my
they're
phone.
ever going to go that crazy.
We'll
probably get it.
Listen, when Sonic Frontiers 2 comes
James.
out, it's gonna need the juice.
Only then will we
I
need
mean,
the hardware.
The Switch helped.
But I mean,
Yeah.
it's
It's
kind
just
of
good to
what
hear
people
it.
were expecting.
The reason
so
Yeah.
why, and once again,
It's
a
good
little
to hear, yeah.
speculative, but the reason why is that Kotick is probably trying to see about putting Call of Duty on Nintendo consoles. So he's asking
Cool.
about their hardware ability.
Oh brother, The
Yeah, I mean,
squeakers are
it'll be good to
gonna
like
be
farm
insane on
Christmas
there.
noobs, I guess, like the good old days. But
But it's
Yeah,
I don't think that's
I
much
don't
of a
know.
shock to
It's
anybody
on the way. It's
that
on the
it's
way.
going to be
There's
more
more signs.
PS4. And yeah, so if you watched our last episode where we talked a bit more in depth about Nintendo, we are speculating that whatever our Mario Odyssey 2 equivalent will be, as well as Metroid Prime 4, is probably going to be system sellers for their new one. So I think if I had to guess, I could see it coming out, or at least maybe not coming out, but being
Yeah.
announced in 2024. I could see
I
that.
certainly think it will
But
be.
only time will tell. To finish up with Nintendo, the Pikmin 4 demo is out currently. You can play it right now.
No,
Uh,
I'm kidding.
people are really liking it. So if you have any interest, I know we touched on it last episode. If you have any interest in Pikmin, give it a shot. I think you can play. I think it's a really meaty demo from what I've seen. So people are really liking it. It looks like it is a very good continuation and evolution of the Pikmin gameplay loop, which is cool. So if you're into that, it is out there for you. So that is all we've got for gaming. Jacob, why don't you tell us
Okay,
about some
so-
Hollywood business?
Actually, a good amount of stuff happened this week. Nothing like other than the Superman stuff, like announcement wise, but there's just like some behind the scenes stuff going on. So the first thing that I'd like to talk about is something I think is going to be a little controversial here. Is this Disney re-release thing? So if you remember back in COVID, WB did something very similar where they released The Dark Knight, they re-released Inception, which they re-released Interstellar. What else did they re-release, James? Lord of the Rings. It was awesome. Yeah, we were in
Oh, during the
theaters.
pandemic,
we
there was
literally
Lord of
had
the Rings,
we had
Interstellar,
like
Inception, Jurassic Park.
a 12 movie weekend. It was awesome, man. So Disney is doing something similar for their 100th anniversary, and in my opinion, more so the writer's strike, because we talked about last week how they literally can't show up to Comic Con this year because they're bankrupt. They have nothing to show. I think they're trying to like make some money and stay afloat. It's kind of weird from Disney. So on July, get a pen. So on July
Fuck
7th,
these
Pirates of the
apps. I ain't
Caribbean is coming back to
seeing
theaters
shit.
through July 20th. Then on the July 21st through August 3rd, Toy Story is coming back to theaters, which is pretty cool. These next two I don't really care about.
That's pretty cool.
On August 4th to August 17th, Frozen is coming back to theaters. I know a bunch of little girls are going to freak out about that. Good for them. Beauty and the Beast is coming back to theaters to August 18th to August 31st. That's actually my favorite
Oh wow.
2D Disney movie. I don't know why I said I didn't care about it. The big one I think for our audience is going to be on September 1st to September 14th. The Incredibles is coming back to theaters. I know a bunch of people are going to want to show up to that.
Yes.
On September 15th to September
Cultured
28th,
people.
Coco is coming back to theaters, which I never saw in theaters because I'd kind of been turned off to Pixar at that point, so I'm excited to see that.
That
It's
movie
great.
rocks.
Just
I
saw it
love
recently,
Coco.
loved it.
The movie
Might
that
even be my favorite
James and I were
Pixar
talking
movie.
about
I
this
really like
last
Coco.
week, and this is just like a crazy coincidence. The Lion King is coming back to theaters September 29th through October 12th. And then, in my opinion, a play by The Rock to get his new movie made. Moana is coming back October 13th through October 26th.
Of course it is.
Whatever, who cares?
Yeah, I was talking.
We're getting
Yeah.
a Moana re-release and remake live action.
So
It's
here's my
been
take
like
on this.
what,
For
5
a
Yeah.
movie
years?
like Beauty and the Beast, that's pretty awesome. Okay, like that. The modern audiences have not seen that movie in theaters. For Moana, the movie was in theaters like not long ago, like at all.
You know what? I'm sure demand plays in just as much for nostalgia. Frozen, Moana, they're beloved movies. So,
Frozen was a given.
But-
I mean, they're not going to bring a bunch of Disney movies to theaters
but I
and
mean,
not do
I
Frozen.
don't really
Made
think that there's.
$1
I don't really
billion.
think that like. I would imagine that what this is knowing that the strike is about to start making people bleed, to kind of trying to get some precautionary money in with these re-releases
I mean,
to kind of
my
pocket
ass.
for
My
potentially a
ass,
little bit of a
people are
rough
not gonna
window
show up to
ahead.
The Lion King and Incredibles. Like, come on.
Oh, of course they are.
Oh, they're going to. I remember when
Mhm.
there was a Lord of the Rings rerun in theaters. It
Packed.
was packed.
It's
Yeah, and
always
these
packed
movies
when
were
they
in
do those.
theaters for like
So
2 weeks at a
Yeah.
time. I mean, these are
they're dropping them.
I mean, good for you if you want to go see them in
I mean,
theaters. I'm probably
I-
not going to do it
I
because
like
I
the movie
hate
theater,
these people.
man.
But good for you. I mean, it's it's cool. I can give you that. If you haven't had a chance to see these movies in theaters,
Honestly,
I can understand
I'm
how it
gonna
could
go
be like an exciting
see.
thing.
I'm gonna go see
Not for
Pirates.
me.
I probably won't see Toy Story. I've seen it too many times. Beauty and the Beast maybe. I'm definitely seeing Incredibles. I'm
Pirates would be
definitely seeing Coco, and I'm
fantastic
definitely seeing
in the
Lion King.
theaters.
My problem with this is more
Mhm.
just like the precedent it sets, where if this makes a shit ton of money, which it will. I mean, we already had the Disney live action remake craze. If this is a huge hit, it tells Disney
it's
we
not
don't
gonna make
even
as
have
much
to
as
remake
like
anything. We can just keep
a new
re-releasing this
hit.
every couple of years. No, it won't make as much, but then it's also just
I
taking
mean,
up
the
slots
argument I would make for that though
for
is that
smaller
I'm
movies.
not trying to offend anyone here. If someone's excited for a movie in September, please put it on our radar. But there is really not a lot coming out in the month of September. Honestly, I mean, I think there's like Meg 2 and stuff like that.
This, hear me out. This one time with it being their 100th anniversary and the writer strike, I get it. Like this one time is fine. But if it is a huge precedent that multiple studios take where movie theaters are just filled with old movies and it's harder for indie movies like that have the movies that are put under like the AMC Artisan banner that have already limited releases, like if they can't get that kind of movie in because Beauty and the Beast is playing for the 5th year in the row because it's making too much money, that's and that also that's not obviously it's a bit pessimistic and cynical,
I mean,
but
this might be
I don't put
unpopular, but if
anything
Beauty and the Beast
past
is a better
Disney
movie
at this
than
point.
a
So
random artisan movie, I'd probably rather watch it.
but it still deserves to have a
Yeah,
chance to be seen in
yeah, but I
theaters
mean, it's like
versus
it's kind of like survival of the fittest.
countless
I don't know.
reruns over
It's
and
just
over
the
and
nature
over.
of the industry, like it or not. I, I'm fine with a movie like Beauty and
I
the Beast
guess.
coming back because it is like an incredibly made movie. Like when I was looking at the budget for Indiana Jones, Beauty and the Beast, I didn't even know this, has a budget of, and let me find it here, $255 million. Dude, that's insane. Like,
Wow.
It's a good movie. Like I said, man,
Oh,
I'm
I
fine with them
lied my
doing this,
ass
but
off.
I
That's the
just
shitty live action one. Never
don't
mind, that movie
want.
fucking sucks.
That made a lot more sense.
That's an expensive animated movie. My point is, I I want this. They can have it be a success.
For
I think
sure,
it has a
absolutely.
lot to do with the writer's strike, like you touched on.
Yeah.
But I do not want, because we're already having a problem in Hollywood where we're seeing the same stuff over and over with like
Yeah, we
they're
just
not
got finished talking
making
about it.
exciting new stuff. This is just it's the next logical step where we don't even have to, let alone make new stuff. We don't even have to remake the old stuff. We could just
live in, like,
keep
Fahrenheit
releasing the old
451
stuff
shit.
over and over, and that's how we make our money.
On a purely short-sighted and just I want to have fun perspective, I just want to say that for anybody who says, they don't make them like they used to, or like if they finally see a movie like Top Gun Maverick that feels like a classic Hollywood movie, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to enjoy sitting in a theater and feeling a movie fill the theater that honestly doesn't feel like a gross CG overspending fest. So,
If it's good for movie theaters,
I just
so be
want
it.
This is not really
I
us,
can
but I
handle
think
it
it kind of does
keeping
impact us because we talk
movie
about it
theaters
a lot
alive.
on here. About how Twitter is used as a tool for. Dude, they
I
have announced that
just
they are
saw that.
limiting
That's what
the
I'm thinking
amount
of.
of posts you can read daily. 600 for an unverified account. 6,000 for a
right?
verified.
If you're not verified.
Oh
Rip Twitter.
my god!
If I get a nickel for every time
plot.
Twitter died this year,
Okay,
I wouldn't need to start a podcast.
Let's
I'll tell you
talk
that
about some
much.
other stuff. Okay.
Lightning round. What's next?
That's so
round?
fucking stupid.
Yeah, that I was
Hayao
I was
Miyazaki.
looking at news
Talk
just
about
while
Hayao
we were
Miyazaki.
talking. I saw that. Well, yeah, Hayao Miyazaki. We
Yeah.
talk about that. So his new and
Based on a book.
final film, I believe, How Do You Live? First of all, we know the runtime, 2 hours 4 minutes. He has been on record saying that he is worried that Studio Ghibli
they
is
are
not really marketing
They
it.
have
They're
posted.
being experimental with it.
I have a direct quote from him here. He says,
Yeah,
"I
so the
wonder if it'll
movie
be
has
okay without publicity.
one poster
I'm getting
with
worried."
it.
So it makes sense if you're a director, you're making a new movie. and they're putting out one poster, nothing
Yeah.
else. It's worrying, but I think both
Yeah, but, like,
Ghibli and
I don't
Miyazaki
know. It's
as
like if you
names
saw like if
are
I hear people talk
marketing.
about
you were
it.
at the theaters and you saw like a
I don't think
new
this
like
movie's
a
gonna
trailer for
flop
a
because
Ghibli
they're
movie
not.
and it was like Hayao Miyazaki's last film and you didn't know about it, you'd be in the seats. But yeah,
Don't get me
I
wrong.
think
I
it's kind of
think it would
dumb.
be
I think they're
better
kind of broke.
if it was marketed. It's stupid, but I feel
I
like
don't know. It's
I
kind
don't
of
think
weird.
it's gonna
I
flop. I really don't. I think
they said something like Ghibli said something that I thought was definitely a worthy thing to say, where they were like, sometimes the lack of information can be entertainment. If you want a perfect example of that, just look at No Way Home. Never marketed Tobey Maguire and Andrew
Yeah, but like
Garfield.
an
That is what
auteur
fueled the craze for that
movie
movie.
that's
Is
like
that
animated
employees
is not the
withheld.
same as like 3 Spider-Man Shitos showing up.
But
yeah, but it's not. I mean, Miyazaki and
For
Ghibli
sure,
are
absolutely.
Yeah.
But
huge. They're huge,
there
But
were
I'm
especially in
definitely like
Japan.
but
So
I'm hearing people.
I feel like as soon as they put up the one poster in the theater, that's what they have. People are going to see
yeah.
it. They're going to see the Miyazaki name
The
attached
thing
to
for
it.
me
I mean, I'm going
is
to
that
see
I
it.
hear people talking about the movie, and there are these movies that spend 100 million on marketing. Like, I really hate to throw it under the bus, but just look at Shazam: Fury of the Gods. There was billboards, there was trailers, there was social media.
Flash.
Nobody saw the movie. Nobody saw the movie,
Elemental.
but especially like these DC movies, nobody saw the movie. Nobody talked about the movie before or after it came out. I am already hearing some people talk about this new Miyazaki film. So it's either
I
gonna
don't know.
pay
They
off,
just
it's
to
gonna be
get
a
general
gamble that
audiences
pays off,
to get
or it's
general
not.
audiences in the theater. That is a bold
It'll
move,
make
and I don't
it's
think
not
people are
going to
going to be
flop.
worth. All right, let's move
I
to
think
quite possibly the
it has the
polar.
I don't think he's
the
wrong to be
polar
worried,
opposite of
but
animation.
I'm
I think you guys have
optimistic.
been waiting for it.
Yeah.
There is going to be an Among Us animated
Oh, no.
series.
Bum bum. It'll be here. You ready? Here's my take of the week for this. It's gonna be funny for maybe a week on Twitter.
We'll
You'll
cover
see
it.
your
We'll cover it.
600 posts about it, and you'll be done for the day. And then it'll be almost instantly forgotten. The meme potential is gonna be very good, but it's the Among
Yeah.
Us show. It's gonna be like that one. I can't even remember what it was. There's this one show that was
Chimney
a
Train, which I have
huge
not
meme
watched.
for a little bit, and now it's just like
Show
whatever.
running it.
Unless this Among Us show goes for like the 11-minute batshit format, like there was a whole season of regular show that was actually in space. If they did some wacky ass show with like 11-minute episodes, it would be incredibly funny to actually see this Among Us show be good.
Dude, the deep
Because then it has to stay
speculation
in the
on the Among Us show,
conversation.
only on Holy Plot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
We will be there day
we'll be
one.
there day
Well,
one.
I think that's kind of it, honestly, guys.
Yeah. Craig, what do you
Well, I
think?
think
Oh, no.
before we go, I would like to touch on Flash because it was our first. I have I have a little touch of nostalgia for Flash. It was our first big talking point on this podcast. I think it's only right we see how it ends. Flash is being removed from over 1,500 theaters because it is just it's Morbius, man. It's not making any money
Re-release
at all,
Flash.
and people, on top of not making any money,
Yeah,
the
and,
people
like,
who do pay
we
to
were all
see it
sick.
don't really like
We
it.
were all sick that
I
weekend.
mean, we didn't
No.
really
When
like
Flash
it.
back in theaters.
So
I mean,
yeah,
the
I can't
box
wait
office
3
is
years from
really
now.
hurting
Flash
right now.
rerun.
I mean, I hate to get
So-
too much into it. Like Indiana Jones is gonna make 60 million this week. It's got a 300 million budget. Flash had a similar budget and it's gonna
I mean,
tank.
here's the
Oof, it's just not looking good.
spending an ungodly amount of money
Big
on
giant.
rushed VFX and hinting that a few glup shittos might show up
Not
is
the one
just not
time.
going to be
The
enough
one time I
anymore to
wanted a
get
Glup
people.
Shitter to show up, he didn't show up.
We've seen it. We've seen
Alright.
it a million times.
I'm done. I'm done. I don't want to talk about this movie anymore.
He didn't.
Yeah,
No Grant Gustin, Glove Shido.
yeah. It's just
Yeah. Anyway, that's what happens with the Flash. The final two
Oh god.
bits of news are actor related. They're really just little blurbs. Idris Elba, people wanted him
I
to be
really
some
wanted
people
him to be
wanted
James
him
Bond.
to be
I wanted
James
him to be
Bond.
James
Apparently,
Bond.
other people really
He is-
problematically did not want him to be James Bond. and he says, I have a quote from him here, that those that weren't happy about the idea made the whole thing disgusting and off-putting. It became about race,
He's
it
out.
became
He's out of
about
it.
nonsense, and I got the brunt of it, which is, I mean, it's upsetting to hear,
Very sad.
obviously. I think it would have been a great James Bond, but it would seem that the speculation for the next James
He's out,
Bond
guys. He
actor,
took
it
himself
will
out of it.
not be Idris
That
Elba,
happened with Michael B.
because
Jordan. The rumors about him being Superman, and he was like, he just didn't even want to get
I mean,
onto the
I
noise
still want Michael
with
B. Jordan to
people
play
being
Val Zod. He'd be
nasty.
perfect.
yeah, which is,
I think the
He'd be
movie's
incredible as
still in
Val Zod.
production.
it's a shame.
Oh, this is so cringe.
Finally-
This is so unbearable.
Finally, our last little bit, and now this is a topic
lot
we
of
have to have
nuance.
some minuscule amount of nuance with, because it is an
Okay.
ongoing situation. It is an ongoing situation. Everyone is innocent until proven guilty, but with Jonathan Majors, which I am sure you have heard about by now, there has been drama with his ex-girlfriends and alleged violent behavior. Now, I was doing a bit of research on it just to make sure that we are as accurate as we can possibly can with something like this. Forbes, one day ago, claimed that the police believe that Jonathan Majors' assault accuser attacked him first. That's a news story. It seems that he does have, outside looking in, it seems that he does have a history with it. I think that the concerns are warranted, and some of the concerns are actually on set violence allegations, of course. And the quote we have here for our little story is that his lawyers have said that method acting is to blame for the alleged violent on-set behavior. Which, I mean, dude, if you are in character so hard that you are threatening your co-stars, it reminds me of this is so cringe. It reminds me
The
of
Rat.
Jared Leto Joker
I don't
on the set of
care. I
Suicide
don't care
Squad.
if you're
Yeah,
Dead
he was
Rat.
sending
I don't care if
used
you're
condoms
acting.
and
I
dead
don't care if you're
rats to
not
his
acting.
co-stars.
A crime is
It's
still
so
a crime.
classless.
Once again, we don't guilty of it, but you can't just hide behind method acting to like
That is
choke someone out.
Yeah, saying if I go up to someone on the street right now and I punch them in the face and they get up and they're like, "What the hell?" I said, "Dude, I'm method acting. You're breaking me out of character.
That's
I'm
also
still
just
gonna go to
bull.
jail for
That's such
assault."
bull.
So
That's like haha, just
that is
kidding. Yeah, that's
it's
Schrodinger's
a
method. Like that's
Schrodinger's acting.
it's a very
Schrodinger's
weird
acting is what that is.
Schrodinger's assault allegations. It's a weird stance to take from a professional legal team. I get they got to do everything they can. Again, I just want to stress he has not been, to my knowledge,
It's
fully
like
convicted of anything. The trial is ongoing. I think Anthony Mackie,
He was like guilt.
fellow
he said he's
MCU
not guilty
actor,
until
has
he's
come
proven
out
guilty.
recently.
Yeah.
Exactly. He was coming out in defense, so it's ongoing situation. I just thought that the method acting angle was funny enough to talk about. But unless my co-stars have
honestly,
anything else to add,
Yeah,
Go watch
Superman
Superman
Lois.
and Lois.
that is all the
Dial
news
Destiny.
we've got.
I'm watching it. Like, well, you know what? If you have a choice, go watch Superman
on
and
HBO
Lois.
Max.
That's all I gotta say.
Okay, so for next week, we are going to be talking about more Superman. I promise this is not on purpose. A new show, I know, crazy, called My Adventures with Superman is debuting next week. It is the first animated show for Superman in 23 years. So we are going to discuss that. It's a 2-episode premiere. Apparently, it is
Pretty big.
fantastic. Critics are loving it. So we're gonna see. So go to HBO Max. Other things to note next week is that for the past 3 weeks we have had an upload schedule of Mondays, but the goal is to get them on to Saturdays so that when we talk about these movies, you know what decisions to make for your weekend. So next week we are going to be uploading on Saturday. We're going to Yes. And the
We're gonna
goal
try.
is to get that
You never know.
consistent.
We're aiming for Saturday.
That's basically all we got. We'll find some other stuff to talk about next week. No big movie releases, which is crazy. After that, though, it's just nonstop. You have Mission Impossible, Oppenheimer and Barbie, Comic-Con, Haunted Mansion, starring Jared Leto.
All the video
So
games
we got a
coming
lot
in
of stuff coming
September.
up, but next week
Oh,
there is
joy.
no film coming out. So if there's something you want us to talk about and you've been grateful enough to listen to the end here, please let us know. We want to talk about what you want to talk about. Other than
Yeah, by all means, it's an open channel. So
yes,
as always, critiques, suggestions, things you want us to talk about, throw them our way. But thank you very, very much for watching. If you did, I have been Liam. This is Jacob and James. We are Holy Plot, and we will see
See ya.
you next week. Stay safe.